There we go. Yeah, I left that in there for the YouTube video. I don't know how to adjust this microphone. Hello, everybody. Cheers. Welcome back to Drinks with Dylan. If you're not watching this, we have a YouTube channel called Drinks with Dylan. You can see me. I'm in a bathrobe. That's how. Listen, I know later in this episode, I mentioned like, hey, you probably listened to the last one a couple days ago. And then 2 weeks pass. I don't know how time works anymore. All right. I'm just trying to figure it out best I can. So bear with me. Thank you for being here still all the same. I super appreciate it. This week we have our guest, Noah Nethery, back again. We spoke to him last week. It was a really good time. This episode, in case you didn't look at the timestamp, is much longer than all of the other ones by about twice. So the first hour is us kind of catching up, talking about some work stuff, salaried positions, and like intellectual property kind of realm of things, and just kind of, yeah, I don't know. It's way more chill for the first hour. And then about, I think, 45 minutes to an hour in, it gets very political. And then we talk about like gun control and gay marriage and a lot of argumentative fallacies and divisiveness in politics. And then it gets like really heavy. And then I leave abruptly to get sushi. So, yeah, you know, pour one up and hang out with us. It'll be a good time. Hey,
Wait,
now,
hold on. I gotta grab my actual drink.
oh God. All right. Well, it's fine. I'll just introduce the second time while you do that. Welcome
Okay.
to the Drinks Podcast. We're starting with Noah leaving frame, because the only rule on the podcast is that we have a beverage while we have the podcast, and also that there's nothing preemptively planned. That being said, there was stuff that came into my head, and I'm just going to let the fact that I said were and was in the same word and just said wers, stuff in my head to talk about earlier today that I was like, oh, I should remember this for later. And one of the biggest things I can't remember, but it was like something with music and schedule. I don't know. We'll figure it out when Noah gets back. But hope y'all are doing great. This is part 2 of the podcast because it was an awesome time talking to him the first time, and it was like an hour and 40 minutes. So it was a little bit of it was a longer podcast, but you know, it was great. And we're doing part 2 now, and I'm just gonna finish pounding this coffee too, so I can get my actual beverage for the podcast. But hope everybody's doing well. And our guest this week's gonna be Noah Nethery from last week's episode that just went up like a couple days ago because I've been potatoing on the uploads. But I don't know, just watch that one if you want to learn more about him. That won't be addressed in the beginning, but he does like computer stuff, and we climb together, and he does music stuff, and yeah. Is there anything that you think I'm missing that should go in your? That'd be like your Tinder profile, little bullet points, right?
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
I remember it goes on the second screen. You do, so that when I look at you, it doesn't look insane on the video that I'm just staring sideways the whole time. But now I gotta make it not full size. There we go. Okay.
Did you also like turn your video off and on again? Because I see like a loading screen.
Awkward. Am I back? No, I'm still not. It might be because it's prioritizing OBS. We might be screwed.
That's fine.
This is so awkward now, though, because now I can see you and you can't see me. I feel so terrible.
Well, let me just open it.
Wait. Oh, can I do both? I'm getting nervous. Hang on.
Can you like share your screen that with like a preview of you? That might be cool. No, but then that might get weird over the.
Yeah, that would be the last time we tried that. I got a little nuts. I can probably, let's see. I can do this. I don't know how delayed this is though. Is this delayed? Does it look bad? You still look fine, so I know it's small.
I can see something. Yeah, I can
you can
see
see me in chat then.
Yeah.
Welcome back. It's been so long that I forgot how to do this, so pardon the whole first 3 minutes of just troubleshooting, but we're all caught up now, I think. I'm going to finish this coffee in a second, but how's things, man? How's life been since... Well, I saw you like a couple days ago, and we're climbing tomorrow, but the podcast was like 3 weeks ago, I think.
Wow, that seems shorter than I would have imagined it would be. I don't know, dude. There's like no goalposts of time anymore. And so I was actually listening back to the first edit, and I remember, and I was like, yeah, dude, congrats for getting engaged. And you're like, yeah, that was like months ago. I was like, oh man, I thought that was like 3 weeks ago.
Dude, did I tell you about the time where I was hanging out with a friend, and we hadn't seen each other in a while, and we caught up. And I could have sworn we just hung out. And it was a good time. We were going to hang out again. And then he was like, hey, man. And I was like, oh, fuck. I thought we just hung out. But okay, cool. Like, I'm still down to hang again. I just thought that literally just happened. And then I like scrolled up like a tiny bit to see our last text. And it was 4 months ago. And I was like, that's not real life. There's no way I saw you yesterday. And yesterday was fucking 4 months ago. That's insane. It freaked me out.
No, you didn't tell me that. But yeah, no, I can absolutely imagine that happening.
Yeah. All right, beverage time. I'm gonna start with mine because yours sounds more complicated. So I'm gonna go with Balvenie Doublewood. It's the Scotch I got for the holidays. I'm usually an Oban 14 kind of guy. Apparently it's pronounced Oban. It's spelled Oban though. So trying to transition from saying Oban to Oban has been. Now I just feel dumb no matter which way I say it. But we're doing the Balvenie Doublewood because actually a bunch of jazz trumpet. Here's the video. By the way, if you're not checking this out, we have a YouTube thing. Here's the bottle. It has this really pretty top. But there was like, I think it was 2 different like jazz trumpet dudes who were like, I like the Doublewood the best. I haven't tried it. So it starts in a whiskey cask and is finished in I think a sherry cask. I could be wrong on that though. I don't remember. But yeah. And then
that's
the
a good
pour
sound.
thing. Here we go. Okay, well, I didn't pour it steep enough to make that. Just sounded like garbage. I'm sorry. That was not went from
sounded
ASMR
live.
to sad.
It sounded live.
Yeah.
Just so you know, this isn't a pre-record. We're doing it live.
Yeah, I botched the hell out of that pour, and also poured way too much because I was like, "Why isn't it making the sound yet?" And then now I just poured like, it's not a lot, but the size of this glass is like almost a soup bowl, so it's a weird middle ground. But okay, you don't drink. For anyone who missed the first one, you're just not like an alcohol guy for a lot of reasons. And you're like you're one of the rare that's going to be the bend the rule situation. But you just said you had drinking. It's like called euphoria or something, but it's not weed. But that definitely sounds like a weed thing.
No, yeah, it goes into the first podcast because I'm not explaining my, my habits again. But I actually have like a sad announcement. So it's called a euphoric, and it's some type of like herby, nootropic-y type of thing that is supposed to make you like feel kind of happy, kind of cool. And I didn't realize the shelf life was really short because when I pulled open, and it's like a nightcap type of drink, I pulled it open, there was literal sand in it.
What? Hello?
Yeah. There was like literal sand in the bottle that was unopened from like February. And I was like, I can't make anything from that. But I was kind of excited. It was going to be like a citrusy, like tonic water, orange peel type of cocktail, which is like fun for me because like, I prefer not to spend money on cocktails and like this is going to be fun. But so instead I'm rocking the 0.0% alcohol beer from Heineken, hashtag no sponsor. There's another sad day drinking a non-alcoholic beer.
Your explanation of that beverage was probably the most like Williamsburg yoga pants thing that I've heard, where you're like this like orange citrusy like herbal like that was so great. Not as a jab, it's just funny because like there's no way to. It's like the same. I think there's certain beverages that like I also enjoy, but if I explain it, I'm like, this is gonna sound like the most like white girl basic shit I've ever said in my life, and I don't know how to say it not to sound like that,
Well, some of the first non-alcoholic bars opened up in Brooklyn, which doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, no, I would expect the first everything probably to open up in Brooklyn, and it doesn't mean they're all great ideas, but I definitely expect that the first will probably be in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
So, I didn't have. Well, I was explaining when you were away. There was stuff that I wanted to talk about that I cannot for the life of me remember. I don't. I mean, the rules are like you have a drink and you don't prepare anything. And I was like, all right, I'll just remember it later. It's fine. And I cannot remember what it was at all. But it was something related to when I was titling the last podcast and something about like timelines and something with creativity or something. And I can't remember. But the other thing that I was like thinking about, because where I'm at with work is a very unique point where I'm developing a skill set and putting in the effort of something that warrants like a salary and a real job. And I'm still doing it for hourly, but while also kind of filling in for like slack that's happening at HQ and also taking on a little bit more so that I can like buff my resume basically. And I'm looking to kind of transition from this hourly thing to either something more serious with the company or to a different company where it's like, hey, I'm literally just doing like real, I'll just say like real job stuff now, because for context doing music and everything, it's a lot of like service industry stuff and just like hourly kind of throwaway jobs. And now it's like, okay, I'm really doing a lot of this like marketing and the sales realm thing, so I want to find something more real. But today was a like extremely slow day at work. Like I spent 2 hours climbing and then an hour just like talking to people, which is like, community things and whatever. So it's not like worthless. But I don't know that I think a 40-hour work week is like a real thing. And I think that a part of that is that like, because there was a company-wide meeting too, and they're like, oh, like a lot of us have been doing a bunch of different jobs and all this and putting in like 70 to 80 hours a week. And I was like, first off, I think a lot of it's excessive because I've seen some of these meetings and they're just not helpful. It's just people having meetings to have meetings. And then a lot of like the stuff that would be passed on to the sales teams was just like overly verbose, just like stuff that didn't like, who wrote this like SOP for this thing? Why is it so extra? Because they had to like prove that they're doing a job. Because just realistically, I don't think a 40-hour work week is a thing, which I don't think is bad either. Like if you come up with a great sales campaign and you put in like 80 hours per week to bust it and get it all trained out and sent out to everybody, and then the next 3 weeks you don't do jack shit but watch numbers come in, like is that not valid of like still, like, yeah, I'm not working this week, but you know how hard that last week was? Or like I came up with this idea and that takes, I don't know, it was tripping me up.
I totally agree. I think like something weird happens when you get put on a salary where all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're not going to tell you how exactly to do your job and when you should do it, but just get this thing done by a certain day. And if that means like, if the deadline's really tight and that means work like, 12 hours a day until it gets finished, that's what it takes. And that's what like we're paying you to do. And if that means then the next week everyone like chills out and like the only meetings are like Zoom happy hours and you are maybe actually only logged online for like 4 hours, like, that's also a reality. It's a lot. Of course, like, they calculate like your salary based on like a 40-hour work week, but you're right. Sure. In practice, it varies just depending on the projects you work on and like what values like the business is having at that moment. And I've had experiences too where it's like super duper intense where I'm like, I can't believe like I'm up at like 3 a.m. talking to someone on the other side of the globe to like fix a problem that's not from me. But then there are also days where I'm like, you know what? Like I can go and get my hair cut at 9 a.m. and like I just let like 1 or 2 people know and like no one gets mad at me for it. I hope you have more of those days where it sounded like you had one today where it was like super chill and you're like, oh, yeah. I'm just here passing time and that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, no, it's a weird line, and a part of where I'm at too is like I am in the midst of trying to turn this job into a more like real job again, just to keep using that term, which is basically just meeting with like some people at corporate and trying to kind of get my name in all the right ears during this restructure, which is just like another excuse for everyone to kind of drop the ball and be spacey on stuff. A little bit of jade there, but also not entirely incorrect because I've like been trying to put together some stuff and I'm just kind of on my own with no HQ support because, they're doing HQ holiday time. But trying to switch into being in a more like in a salary situation and being like, hey, listen, this is not hourly stuff, because right now as it stands, I'm still clocking in hourly, but I have like an insane amount of autonomy in the facility, which is great. Because it's like, yeah, like if you want to get more hours, just clock in more. And if you don't, like you can just go early or whatever. But like the issue is not clocking in, or like if I need to take a day to work from home to take care of some personal stuff, just like show what I did and whatever else, because not all of it's trackable. Or like Monday, they're setting for a comp at the gym in Brooklyn. So I'm just going to go shadow the setters and help them out on Monday for a comp. And I was like, is that cool? And he's like, dude, I don't care. Just say you were in Brooklyn and clock in. Like, I don't give a shit. That's fine. And it's like, that's great. But why can't I just, why can't I then have that, like, I guess luxury of like, I don't want to have to keep trying to track every single thing ever, it gets tedious.
Yeah, no, the tracking is totally a thing of like, I feel, of that like hourly situation. We actually have like a very funny problem where like, we're trying to implement tracking of effort because, it's such a trust and like malleable like system, how we work, especially like as a programmer, that we have to get like reminded by our managers to fill in a timesheet, like when we worked and like just a very brief explanation of what we did. And of course, you can imagine that not many people actually do that because like, what's the consequence? Like there really isn't one.
Yeah. Also for context, by the way, so what you do, like it changed recently, but like is programming safe to say? Just like computer programming?
Yeah, programming is very safe to say. It did change. It went from software engineering to data science, which I believe I also touched on last podcast. So, but yeah, ultimately, programming is like my way of solving the problems that come up, in my new position.
Okay, gotcha.
Also, here's a little sidebar. So I listened to the edit that you made yesterday,
Oh
and
no.
I was very like amazed at just like one little section where you like gave an intro to me and you like happened to get my like my major right and like my school and uh like the compositions I was working on or something, and I was like, dang, either you have like a really good memory or you're a really good listener or you like stalked me on Facebook before this. And I felt kind of bad. And so I listened to your first episode of this podcast yesterday. So I
Oh
get more
god.
of a perspective of like, because like I was around a little bit like for some of the stuff that you talked about, but there's clearly different things happening, in our personal lives, and there was actual like college where we were just totally disconnected. And yeah, that was like really fun. So I highly recommend everyone like listen to that, not because it's like happy like good times, but like it's really good. It's really good to know where like you're coming from. And
Yeah, I
I'd
paid him to
also
say
like
that, by the way. So,
yeah. Well, no, you do such a good job of like pumping up like the guests, and I'm like, we should like throw it back every once in a while because Dylan has like accomplished, I would say, a large amount of things in a shorter amount of time than most people I know, and that's not always a good thing, as you do share, but I think it really shows what can happen when you just like want something so bad. And I'd also like to think that there's a timeline where you played clarinet in band and I played trumpet. I believe that alternate timeline exists.
or there's like a different reality where I actually played clarinet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I definitely didn't do any of the stalking stuff. I think it's just like listening and knowing. But I definitely like. I wish I could say that I put in that much effort for this, but it is my like joy side project. Like the next person that I think I'm having on, I was messaging on Instagram today, and it's like my roommate from college, which I realized there's a lot of those actually. But it was like one of my first roommates in the city. At the dorms at City College. So gonna have a podcast with him, and all I'm gonna say is like, you do baseball and something with politics now, right? And you live not in New York anymore, and that's gonna be his introduction. So it like ebbs and flows. It helps that we also climb and like hang out regularly, so I know kind of what you're up to, and then it's just like fresh. I don't talk to many people either. My circle's like very small, not just because of Corona. I just like it's tiring for me to keep up with a lot of people, so I have like a small circle that I care a lot about, and that way it's just like very effective versus like trying to talk to 10 people is tiring. Like granted, I want to catch up with like everybody, and I'm sure I'll do a podcast with a bunch of people, which is great and a great like platform to like make content, but also just like catch up with friends, which is really just the majority of this podcast. But like I get tired, man. I like thought of everyone that I would want to like talk to on Christmas or the holidays or whatever, and it's just like, nope, I'm just going to make food and there are 3 people coming over and those are the 3 people I'm going to talk to today. Like, that's all I got.
Yeah. Which was awesome, by the way. So sorry, folks, but I was able to go to Dylan's place. I know not everyone was, so I'm very thankful that I made the cut. I hope I'm not like outing you at all for like sending out invitations, but
No.
no, it was incredible. I mean, Dylan does talk about his love of cooking in episode 1, but it's definitely understated. Like you definitely like cooked 2 entrees, which is one more than I would have expected. And you and more, like you were like great hosts, and it was a great time. And I hope you put the smoke alarm back. 'Cause
We did.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Moore was like, we should put it back. And I was like, do we have to? I really hate it. For context, apparently this is a thing anyways, because I was watching this cooking channel I've been checking out, and this guy talked about how he sets off all of his alarms. And he has like a nice apartment and like does this for a lot of people, and was like a head chef at a fancy restaurant, where the food's like small and looks inedible. So he like is very, capable and financially in a different position. So he's like, has a nice setup, but he's like, yeah, I set the smoke alarms off just all the time, which I also think is like a product of cooking with cast iron, as it just does that. But I didn't want to put it back in, and I live in a 1 bedroom, which is really just like a souped up studio apartment in Astoria, and like the smoke alone, there's no ventilation, just straight up. There just isn't. It doesn't exist. Like, you can light a candle and the whole house will smell like a candle. You can cook one thing in the kitchen, and if smoke goes in the air, it sets off the alarm, and the bedroom and bathroom are smoke. There's just no like vents, and the vent thing, even on the oven, like doesn't work either. So it just, the smoke alarm goes off, and in the midst of cooking like 7 different dishes, it got an attitude. And then Noah was like, I'm a software engineer, I can take out the batteries. And I was like, wow, I need to learn that trick. I've been behind.
The only reason I know how is because I had a very unfortunate experience. Essentially, like not broiling, but like trying to bake a chicken shawarma in my oven. And I made the mistake of like the fat from the chicken was like hitting a cookie sheet, and that was burning and then smoking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kept the oven closed, a little bit too long, and it got really smoky in there. And when I opened up the oven door, of course, like not only did like the smoke alarms go off, but I actually had to leave the apartment for a little bit because the smoke was so intense that I was starting to get a headache. And I'm like, oh, this must be what like smoke poison feels like. So I opened all the windows, left the apartment, and I tried to figure out how this can never ever happen again. And so I'm kind of with you where I'm like, sometimes when I'm cooking, especially with like oil or fat or something, and the temperature has to be really high, I'm thinking, okay, I'm definitely going to take the smoke alarm out, but when am I going to put it back? Because it's really nice when it's out, and I'm just weighing like, if carbon monoxide were to be in like the apartment.
If I actually needed this to not die, is it worth the beeping when it gets smoky?
Exactly. Like, it's one less time I have to go up there and like, put the batteries in, but I also wouldn't know if I, would be currently dying of carbon monoxide or something.
What if I don't get to ever put the batteries back in, Just, yeah, you got to pick your poison. It's weird, man. I think the other thing is like, I always cook with cast iron. Like, I just like swear by them. They're great. And I think they're definitely like one of the most diverse and best pans to do stuff with. Granted, I've gotten some like unsolicited remarks on socials about how to care for them. And I don't claim to have all the answers by any means, but like, I think a part of it is that you hear these stories of like, I don't know, old grandparents in like Poland that have had this cast iron in their family for like 8 generations. And they just like, yeah, I just wipe it with a newspaper and that's it. I don't know why they sound like that. That's their accent. They're just like, oh yeah, newspaper and that's it. And then you just dry wipe it and it's fine. And like, it sounds kind of gross, but like, maybe it's also because I grew up with a lot of outdoor stuff and camping, but I don't do like a full clean every single time, which usually is just like I put salt and like wipe it down with the paper towel. I don't leave like a bunch of food and shit in there, obviously, but like, it's weird because you make your own coating, but they get smoky very quickly. Like, if you cook like bacon, this morning I was scared I was gonna set the fire alarm off while Moore was asleep, and I was like, oh fuck, bacon, there's gonna be like high heat and it's gonna get a little smoky even though there's bacon fat. I don't know, man, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's funny too, because it's like, you can't have one without the other. It's like, if you want to wake up to the smell of bacon, you also have to wake up to the sound of the fire alarm going off.
Yeah, exactly. Or you step on your George Foreman grill, like, Michael Scott. R.I.P. The Office on Netflix, by the way. Now we all got to buy Peacock, which is NBC streaming. What a weird name. Yeah. They could have just called it, I know their logo's a peacock, but like, that's a pretty bold play to be like, we're creating a streaming platform. Also, it's not titled NBC anything. It's just called Peacock. Here we go.
Dude, can you believe there's a whole team of branding people who get paid an absurd amount of money, and like, that's what they came up with? Like, you know what? We really need to strike the NBC branding from the streaming service. And now, I thought it was a turkey, but I can understand why you wouldn't want to call your streaming service Turkey. So I guess like Peacock, sure, it works, and they all get paid, whatever.
Yeah, right. For their 1 week of like 60 hours. That's the other thing too that I think about is like, all right, so there's 2 of us, right? We're going back to job stuff. By the way, this is going to be a very all over podcast, and I don't care. That's just, it's the setup of the podcast. Going back to the job stuff. There's 2 of us that do the same position. We're both like called like lead community advisors. So we like supervise a team of 1 person, but realistically also kind of supervise the operations team and get them caught up on sales things, because realistically they do a lot of the selling too, but the whole company is just confused and doesn't know what's going on because they're on the other side of the country. So everyone's trying to figure it out and communicate better, which is good. That's a step. But anyways, we both work very differently. He has like a master's in biomedical engineering. And he's very much like, his game for fun is Factorio, which is like a game where you just like engineer stuff and you just like make things go efficiently, and you shoot off rockets by like making oil and building parts, and like it's just like a whole thing that like almost sounds like work, to be honest. It just sounds like it's a very difficult thing, but he enjoys it. So for all these campaigns and stuff we've been doing internally, he'll do a lot of like the pulling from software and creating like these workflows, which is like a if yes, like if then clauses and different pathways for it all, and like automation and all of that, where he's like, I'll just spend 6 hours doing it now so that it's 20 seconds for the rest of forever, which is dope and really cool. And like, I learn a lot from it. But he does that, and then he goes home and he like shuts off his brain to work stuff. He just doesn't give a shit. And he's also been at the company longer and gone through even more of like the tomfoolery that happens there, which is, I think, a part of it. Because I asked him, I was like, how do you like, you go home and you stop thinking about it, right? And he was like, yep. Was like, how do you do that? He's like, listen, man, it's been 3 years. I don't fuck around. I go home and it's off. That's it. They've had their course. That's it. And I think the weird side of that is that when it's like a very kind of like a black and white job of like, I need to make this workflow for this thing, and I need to import this list into this software from this software, it can be like very much just like, I do this thing, and it's like very objective and goal driven. And then on the other side of it, like to create the campaigns or come up with the sales things, is stuff that I'll usually like think of in the shower or like at home. And I'm like, what if we do this and we use this language and then we make this poster look this way? And it like, I think it's a weird blend. And I'm not saying like it's harder, because I don't like a lot of the automation and stuff that he does is like harder for me to do, but that it's like a more time consuming with less reward, if that makes sense. Like, you get those tasks done if it's like a black and white thing, or you're programming whatever, and you're just like, bam, that's it, and it's completed. And then if you're like, but what about like if we lowered that flower and then change the colors and sell this? It's like a different form of thinking that never really stops. I don't know.
I had two facets of this conversation to two different people, like literally within the past 24 hours. The first one is like, I'll be completely honest, and I was just talking to someone today, and she'll know who she is, but like, I really believe anyone can code. If you can imagine how to do something in real life, all you really need is just the little bit of language to tell a computer how to do it. I think that it is much less harder than actually working with people. I think people that work with other people are doing something way harder. And don't get me wrong, like I love coding, but like coding is very clear, and like people aren't. And that's like where like the struggle with working with people are. And even just the other day, I was talking to a friend's parents, and when I'm like working as a programmer, it's very easy for me to just say like, that's not my job, I'm not doing that. And I do the same thing as your coworker, where I'll just go home and I just like won't check the email. I won't answer any, messages, as long as it's not like, I know like I'm not like in an urgent project, which is a lot of the time. And I think that's a very healthy boundary for me to set with that job.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
But then on the flip side, if I'm working on a piece of music and I'm trying to get a whole production up, and it's like, oh man, like this scene doesn't look right, and I need to like rewrite, a couple bars of music, like I'm going to stay there and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter how, like, I'm not going to say like, well, sorry, that's my time for the day, I guess I'll do it tomorrow. It's like, no, people are counting on me. It's a very collaborative, like, working with people process. And so with music, it's a totally different story. And of course that can be a bad thing, because people might be able to take advantage of you, but I totally know like what you mean. I think when you work directly with people, I'm just echoing what you're saying at this point.
Yeah, no, it's weird to get used to, like, and it's also weird that's part of the thing that like I wish was more quantifiable, because like I clock in now, like today I clocked in on the train because I started sending emails and doing shit on the train. It's like, I'm not gonna just not get paid for this. Like I wouldn't. This is one of those examples of like, if it were salaried, I'd feel like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever. When work needs me, I'll be there, and if it's not urgent, like I'll still set my time off of like, all right, my reminders are turned off, I don't care. But if there's someone that hits me up Sunday, Monday, and they want to get a membership or something, or there's some account issue, yeah, I'll like hop on and do that real quick. But like, today one of the things that I was working on was prepping for this meeting, because I'm going to, hopefully, fingers crossed, I reached out to basically like second in command for sales stuff. And the next step, I think, is speaking to the CEO just very candidly and being like, hey, this is the position I want and I'm interested in moving up. But everyone's just saying like, yes, you have good ideas, but I don't want to just hear that. I want to like do the thing. So I was pulling like some metrics for it. So, it doesn't take that much time to be like, this is like our churn this month, and this is how much we've grown this year compared to last year, which also is crazy because pandemic, but we like grew by like 40% in member count. So not to flex, but but like that is something that's just like, okay, cool. This is like a black and white thing. Or we look at our revenue for the month and we're like, okay, our like pathway products aren't performing the way they need to be. Our Learn series is underperforming by like tens of thousands of dollars. It's like, okay, that's like a black and white thing of like, this is bad and it needs to be fixed. But then being like, how do we fix it? That's just such like an obscure thing. And it makes more and more sense, like how people just like, they're paid and they just kind of stare at the wall and then they're just like thinking about it for a while, or like I'll walk around and be climbing and being like, how can we do this? Or like drafting all that up is like a whole different, I almost feel like bad about it, I guess, because the only thing I have to compare it to is the music stuff. And for the longest time, I was always thinking about music stuff and music careers and music business and all these things. And I was like, wow, this really isn't, like, I wish there was some like kind of like fruit of your labor for thinking this much about it instead of just like being depressed, and like, yeah. I couldn't really figure out what that was. And then when I started speaking at schools, I was like, oh, this is literally like, now I'm getting paid to think. So all those times where I sit in the shower thinking about this thing or how to like market this, that, or the other, the reward is like this moment. But it's so much more like obscure with the whole creative side of things. I don't know. It was just something that was on my mind that just didn't make. I'm also just not used to real jobs. I realized I'm talking to someone about possibly putting in a word with a different company, and they're reaching out to like the VP of sales, and they're also pretty chill, but like also make a boatload of money and are pretty like regulated for things. And I'm looking at possibly getting in there. And it's just weird to be like, these are the benefits. And like, we know it's not awesome. And I was like, literally all of this compared to the job that I have right now, like this is already the job that I'm doing, but the pay is way better. I don't know. This seems pretty great to me. Like, I'm so new to it,
Yeah, that was actually my experience with the job that I have now, where like I have some friends who, they were, they knew they wanted to like go into some sort of engineering or STEM. And they had a pretty good idea of like what the market was like. And when we all got hired at the same time, they're like, we're like pretty underpaid for like where we live and like what we do. And I'm just sitting there like, I can't believe they actually gave me a job. This is the most money I've ever seen in my life. And I could be happy with this amount forever. Like it's just a completely different perspective. And I think going back to what you were saying, I've been thinking a lot about how important it is to like stand for something. And, there's something about like, all those times that you spend like thinking about your position on something, or how you think like a facet of the world works and trying to explain that to other people, or, it can be about the creative process or whatever. But I have been thinking that like, I think people really appreciate someone that stands for something. And I remember even like trying to kind of make a name for myself in like my day job. I was very clear like from the beginning, like this is what I stand for, this is what I do, this is what I believe in. And it wasn't always like something that they needed at that time. And there were some people that would disagree with like if I was spending my time in like a good way. But at least I like stood for something and like tried to let people know that like this is something that I think is important. And it took a little bit and it paid off. And I think like I hope you felt like the same way when you were like speaking at schools. You're like, man, I'm thinking a lot about, this facet of art or like this facet of the music business. And now that like I'm being paid for sharing those things, like you're standing for something. And I do think that people respect that.
Yeah, it was, it's like one of my favorite things to do. Not even because of like, hey, I get paid to talk about things I think about in the shower, which is like just a weird thing, but also just because like I genuinely enjoy it, right? Like otherwise I wouldn't be thinking about it all the time. Which is why the whole day job thing is a little bit weird for me, because I'm not as passionate about it, like I don't really care about like bringing back the language of activation fees and finding a price point that's like can cut its like profits and losses enough to be worth putting into the software and creating a contract with commitment clauses. Like that's not, it's kind of fun because I like business stuff, but then there's times where I'm like, I don't think I'm compensated enough or interested enough to be doing this while I'm in the shower, which is what I spoke about to my supervisor too. I was like, listen, man, this is getting into shower time, and that's like my me time where I focus on my projects, and this is becoming my project, which is fine, but I'm putting in a lot of time. So I'm just letting you know now, when I start putting in that time, like I'm going to be expecting things back, which is why I'm reaching out to these guys. And if that's not the case, then that's fine. But then I'm going to do everything I can in my power to get my shower time back to myself and just be focused on like what I think I need to focus on, which is, I don't know, man. It's weird. I don't understand the whole, I think, and I guess tying it back to the first episode that you mentioned, because of my family situation, I never really like had this kind of exposure to like, this is a job that pays this much money, or this is like a retirement fund, or like any, like literally any of that made no sense to me. Because it was all like, it was basically like the whole time was living the same as it was being like an artist doing just like throwaway jobs where it's like, yep, I just got paid, so now I'm buying groceries, and then I didn't get paid, so we're finding what's in the fridge. Like, and it was hard to like, it's hard to adjust and also like imagine these things and like feel like I'm getting into that. Like now putting my stuff on a resume, I almost feel like I'm like lying further in a sense. Like it doesn't feel real that I'm like the stuff that I'm writing, and not like oh, it's so impressive or whatever, but like the terms that I'm using and the way I'm wording it feels very professional. And I almost feel like I'm lying, not that I am, but just because it's just a whole new realm of things that I'm like, oh wow, like no, I can do this, and this is what I do. And the more I've seen other people in, I guess I'll keep saying like real jobs, the more it seems like no one really knows what they're doing, but everyone has like the same general like ability and understanding enough where like everyone just kind of like, I don't know, is that dark? Or I'm not trying to sound like jaded or negative, and I'm not saying everyone's like lying, but it's like, you know, no one really, I think, has everything like 100% glued together. But I always felt like from the outside looking in, like, oh, if someone's doing something in sales or like some sort of like coding thing, they're like this insane person. And then in speaking with you or speaking with our friend Moose, he was like, dude, I don't know what's happening. He's like, this is scary. They're just like, do this thing. And he's like, what if I mess it up? I have no one to report to. I just code it and say, okay. And like, and hope it goes well and is exactly what they need. And like, that's so, I think everyone goes through that, but I feel like particularly detached from it. Like I have no clue what any of this is, or like the idea of like getting benefits and a salary, no idea what that would even feel like, you know?
Well, I can tell you it feels great. It feels pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. Someone recently told me that, and I'm paraphrasing, they were like, no, it sounds like you're pretty good at like taking opportunities as they arise. And I said, yeah, you're right. Like that's actually like my life. Like I think that's the secret. Like I'm just very lucky to get this far. Did I ever think like I would be in this exact position? No. But I now looking back, I can see the moments where I'm like, okay, my composition teacher at FSU is very into computers. There is a possibility here to like double dip in credits. There's a possibility here to maybe do something a little bit niche to try to like get some recognition from that. And also just like, you know, there's an opportunity here to learn something new. It's like 50% something I'm interested in, 50% something I'm maybe a little bit less interested in, but it's a new door that has opened up. And so I'm going to take it because literally like I don't know what I would do otherwise. I'd probably like fill my time with like something that I would like maybe regret. And not every move, you know, like works out. Sometimes you're like, oh, dang, that was like a huge waste of time. And like I ended up making a lot of people mad or upset or something. But I feel very confident in saying that my life is like trying to fill my time with stuff that makes me happy and noticing when doors open. And even if it's not the exact perfect thing that like I want to do, I try to figure out a way that like maybe it can help me get there. I don't know, maybe that's like altruistic, because to be honest, like there's also a lot of luck that has just happened. Especially like getting this job, right place, right time. For whatever reason, I had the confidence to like really email people and like let them know how badly like I wanted this job.
I remember you talking about that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you like the exact story, but I actually talked to my hiring manager eventually and like was like, oh, how did this like actually go down? Sorry for folks listening. Dylan is looking at disbelief behind him.
No, sorry. I live in a first floor apartment, and like, you know, in anywhere in New York, and there's just like a lot of weird sounds. So sometimes it's upstairs neighbors, and sometimes it's the heater or the floors, or like literally the hallway for the main entrance is this wall right behind me. But there's just some crazy sounds that sound like someone's like sawing at something, and I was like, I hope this isn't my window. It's just fun to check real quick. Sorry.
That's funny. Um, I don't remember what I was saying.
Emailing your hiring manager.
Oh yeah, talk about the hiring manager. And actually hearing the story go down, there was so many things that could have gone wrong, and it almost didn't happen. And it was pretty much him who was like, we should check this kid's resume out, like just to like be sure. And if all the other things before that didn't happen, and if he didn't like have the desire to do that very day, which was like apparently the last day for hiring or something, um, I literally wouldn't be here right now. And a lot of things have come from taking that job. So it would have been completely different. Like I see a reality where I would have stayed in Florida. And I was thinking like, I'll get to New York eventually, but like I think being in Florida is just like what I have to do right now. So that could have totally happened too. And
Sure.
I probably, it wouldn't have been like exactly where I like would have wanted to be, but I hope I would have like at least found a way to like be okay with that.
Yeah.
But dang, I'm sure happy I'm in New York. And I was listening to episode 1, and you were talking about the first time you visited New York and like the goofy smile thing.
Yeah, I looked like an
Dude,
idiot in the car, bro. I looked so
dude,
stupid.
I had the same exact thing. I remember the first time that I like really like went to New York like on my own, like for a purpose to do music, and like
Hmm.
same thing, dude. Just like music in your head and like just like literally walking around smiling, and
Yeah,
New Yorkers being like, what's that person's problem?
I
But it's
looked
like
like such a goon. Yeah.
it's so true. Like that's a real feeling that happens. And I think if you don't have that, like New York's probably not the place for you.
Yeah,
'Cause
no,
there's a lot of
definitely.
logical reasons not to live here. There are really good reasons not to live
There
here.
are an insane amount of good reasons not to live here. I feel like if this isn't like your cup of tea or doesn't call you, it's just not like it's shitty and smelly and like everyone's mean and like the weather's weird. Like it's just definitely not like on paper you could definitely make this look terrible also, which makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and what it feels like a misfit finally getting to the island of misfit toys. That's what it felt like for me.
Yeah, I think that's a reference to something that I don't know, but it sounds familiar.
Well, I mean, like there's the actual island of misfit toys from like that Rudolph puppet, like old timey Christmas movie. I think it's
Okay.
Rudolph.
That sounds
But
creepy.
okay, well,
Not
if you're
meant to
thinking
shade,
the
but just
band,
like an island of misfit toys. Like that seems like some old creepy, like they're puppets with like the dude, like the what's that called? I guess Puppet Master, or
like a
whatever.
marionette or a puppeteer, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. But like one has like an eye falling out, and it's like creepy because it's in black and white, and their faces are all
Okay,
like weird
you
looking.
clearly didn't watch enough Christmas puppet movies as a kid. That is your idea of a puppet. Um, I honestly cannot remember. Excuse me, the context of that uh movie, like why they go to that island. Oh, because like Santa is a toy maker, and like not all
Sounds good to me.
toys. At this point, I'm making up my own plot, and I think
And then some of the misfit toys look all
mm.
fucked up, like the ones I was talking about. See, it's not crazy. It could totally.
No, actually, you're right, and I hope people aren't thinking of the actual band Misfits, because that's also a very scary image. I like Misfits.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I don't have other thoughts on it. What you're saying is very true. When I first got to New York, I thought it was Jersey because I was like waiting for us to go through like this big city in Jersey, where the other school I was applying at was, and I just didn't see it. And I was like, well, this isn't like an actual. No part of this is a city. What a joke! And then we came out the Lincoln Tunnel, and I took a photo on Snapchat and swiped for the filter, and that's why I saw Manhattan, and I was like, no way, that makes so much sense. It was a great time. And then not immediately, after driving around Times Square, where I learned that New York was all one ways, trying to find the parking garage, and then it started raining and our check-in wasn't for another 2 hours. And then we tried to sit down at Starbucks in Times Square, which just saying that sentence out loud makes me feel
Oh
like an
gosh.
idiot. And then I was just like, I don't know what to do, and we don't have umbrellas, and I'm panicked, and I'm like, now I'm starting to get overwhelmed. And then it went away. But it was like a roller coaster of like, fuck yeah, oh, this is insane, and then eventually chilled out. But it was the rain's fault, to be fair.
And the feeling does come back every once in a while, and I welcome it when it does.
The
When you're like,
overwhelmed thing, or like the
not
stoked
not
part?
overwhelmed, but just like being stoked.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's times where me and more like walk around and stuff. I think part of it too is that I don't get out into the city as much as I really like want to, and also with shutdown it's just hard to. But like more works in Soho, which is just like a beautiful area in New York. Like it's kind of touristy and a lot, but like the streets, you know, you go down like any of the side streets there and it's like way better. Like we walked down Prince one day and it like chills out when it's not on Prince and Broadway, which is just like a terrible corner to be on. But like you get to see that all the time. But when I lived in Harlem and I was working far in Queens, all I saw was like Queens, which had really good food by Elmhurst. There's a bunch of like markets that like didn't have signs or people that spoke English, but the food was incredible. And then like Harlem, and neither of those feels like the real city to me. And Astoria doesn't really, honestly, either, which is where I live in Queens. It feels like a really cool town, which is awesome, but it doesn't feel like New York. But like to get that time where I like go to New York and like actually be there, like walking around Columbus Circle or walking through Fidei or whatever, is like, I think it's super, super important. And I'm a little bit jealous of Moore with where she works just because she gets to see it all the time. But if I just like stay on trains all the time, it gets sad. That's where the bad part comes in.
You know, first of all, have you been to Prince Street Pizza in Soho? It's just a little bit
like
off of Broadway
place.
and Prince.
I think me and Moore went once.
Okay, it's
Could be
dope.
wrong
They
there.
have like apparently it's like a thing like the Soho Square, which is just like Sicilian pizza. But dude, I used to like maybe once every 2 weeks go to Prince Street Pizza. I love it. It's so good.
I'll have to get there. There's a lot of really good pizza places in the city, and some of them look real gross, and they still are incredible.
No, it's true. And actually, have you heard of the pizza principle in New York?
No.
I'm probably misquoting this exactly, but the idea is, and I can't remember which comes first, but like the price of a plain slice, and for you non-New Yorkers, that's a slice of cheese pizza. But a single plain slice should be about a single ride on a subway, and apparently they increase by like the same rate. And I'm talking about averaging all the price of pizza like in New York, because obviously you have your like luxury pizza that's like $7 a slice, but then you have your like Sbarro like sketchy like $1
pennies and some pocket lint. Is that good? Yeah, it's fine here.
But the idea is that it like averages out to be the price of a single ride on the subway, and that they increase in their average price together. So when the subway went from like $2.75 to $3 for a single ride with like the card or something, the idea is that like the median price of a plain slice should be around $3. So I get really mad when I see like not very good pizza that's over $3, because I'm like, you are violating the very economics that hold this city together.
Dude, I get pissed when I see a plain slice for like anything above like $1. I'm like, this better be fucking worth it, because otherwise I'm just gonna be real upset the whole time. Because it's like, a whole pie is like $16 instead of a slice. It's $2. Like, okay, let me just get a pizza then. Like, but I don't know. I want to try more pizza places. I'm not really a big Barstool guy. But they have the president of Barstool does like his pizza reviews around the city, which is like actually pretty cool, because there's some really good spots. One of them was down by where Moore lives, or used to live rather, in like South Brooklyn, but it was Spumoni's. They also have like Spumoni
L&B Spumoni's.
Yeah, dude.
I've had it. I'm a pizza guy, dude. I've had it.
Yeah, their pizza fucks. It's pretty great.
Yeah, no, it's different. I have another friend who, it was me, her, and her sister, and I was like, no, like you got to trust me. Like we have to try this pizza place, and like we got it. And this was during the pandemic, so I think we got it ordered like through a food app. And not only did we get the pizza, but we got the Spumoni as well, which is like the ice cream.
Yeah.
The tricolor ice cream. And yeah, it was worth it. It was dope. There's one more pizza place that I've yet to try, and it's oh man, it's in Staten Island. And I used to go to Staten Island quite a bit. I don't mind it there most places. But oh man, what's it called? Okay, I'll remember it when I'm not thinking about it. I'll just blurt it out. But
nice.
Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue right now. But dude, so we need to hang around Soho more. Another high school friend who lives in the city who did theater. I don't know if you remember him, and maybe I don't even want to say his name on the podcast, but he showed me the Soho Repertory Theater, and they have done some of the coolest like either interpretations of old plays or like just wild new plays written by super young playwrights I've ever seen. And I will
Interesting.
stand in line for hours to get their rush tickets because um, it's so good there. They do like such great stuff. So like shout out Soho Rep.
I didn't know
I've
there were any
very
more high
much
school
enjoyed it.
people here.
What?
I didn't know there were more high school people here. That's the part that's tripping me out.
I know. There are some folks, definitely like some theater folks, just because like New York. I'm trying to
Yeah.
think of like anyone who
Were they in our grade? Were you like close to them?
I wasn't super close to them really until after like moving here. But no, they're older. They're
Oh,
like
okay.
2 or 3 years older.
Yeah, then there's no way I'm gonna know that person. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Um, there is another person who was like 1 year or 2 years younger than us. I feel like we can shout her out because she's actually a very like awesome model on Instagram. Her name is Susie. Does that ring a bell at all? I don't
no.
want to say the last name, but well, how am I supposed to shout her out if I don't know her last name?
Do you know the Instagram handle? I mean, that's basically the same thing, I guess. But I didn't know there's
Yeah.
anyone from. I'm trying to think of.
I feel like I can plug her Insta just because it's like public, and
Yeah.
I think her take on modeling. She doesn't need to have a take, but sometimes she has a take and sometimes she doesn't.
Oh, I know someone in the city actually that was also in band that is like doing modeling stuff.
Oh, I
and,
don't
like,
need to say her last name. Sorry. Her Instagram handle is Susie in the City. That's SUZZY_INTHE. So in those one word _city. And she is a NYC model, paralegal, and then another acronym that I don't know what it means. But check her out. Really cool stuff that she does. I think she just started a brand as well.
She
Yeah,
looks
she's
familiar,
pretty cool.
but I
She's from
cannot
Arrowhead.
remember.
Oh, I probably
Wild.
shouldn't say our high school out loud. I'm
That's
gonna
okay.
dox everyone right now. No, she was in
And
high
now
school. I
none
think
of
she
us
was like
got the
1 or 2 years younger than us.
Oh, did you get your stimulus check, by the way?
I did. I
God,
can't believe I
I'm so
qualified.
nervous.
I definitely don't need it.
I think
I got
you
I got a
literally
partial
shouldn't.
amount
Not
though,
in
so
a
that makes
shade
me.
way, but like I just literally think like you're. I was reading all the qualifying stuff because I was like, why didn't I get mine yet? And I think the first thing was like the salary part. But I mean, listen, I don't give a shit. That's definitely money better spent on people than whatever the fuck the rest is going to anyway. But I was just like, Moore got hers. I've been literally asking everybody that I know in the city, being like, did you get it? Did you get it? Did you get it? And it's like 70-30 right now, which makes me nervous. But at least it's not like 90-10 where I'm like the only person that didn't get it that I know of yet.
No, I definitely did not get the full amount, which again I think is fair. But I am surprised that I even got it at all.
The
That's
full
super
amount being
weird that you haven't
600,
gotten
by
it
the
yet.
way, which is like 0. Yeah, this is okay. So this should be going up soon, but the stimulus is gonna be
Wait,
$600.
when's the last time you did a tax return? I hope you do your taxes every year.
Last year I didn't file because I knew I'd have to pay and I didn't have any money because I was like written off as like a non-employee and made like $1,200 a month. So I just like didn't. I was like not eating some days, so I was like, well, there's no way I have money to pay taxes on this non-tax, non-employee income. And I was like, if I'm not an employee, do I have to pay? And I was like, I'm not gonna figure it out this year. I'll deal with it next year. So, no, I guess. So IRS, if you're listening. I don't know how one of you got to this podcast, but you should probably figure out something else to do with your time. And or, I live in New York. Come find me. We'll chop it up. It'll be a great time. You can get in line with Sally Mae and be like, you owe us money. And I'll be like, well, sorry.
With what? It's all gone. No, I'll see if there's like a form or like something that you can send them because I wonder if it's. Well, actually, did you get the earlier stimulus check from like?
Yeah.
Okay,
which
then
I was nervous about. So I
they're
should
the
get this
IRS.
one,
They know how to find you.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure everyone does at this point, to be honest. So it's okay. Yeah. Anyways.
IRS, follow me on Instagram.
Yeah. Dude, I actually follow the TSA's Instagram. It's just the worst puns I've ever read. Like, not even like clever puns. They're just terrible. And there's way too many and way too small. Like, when you're like, okay, you can't actually overdo puns in a sentence. I swear, their social media person must be like some like white dude in his like 50s from like the suburbs of middle America who's just like, don't worry, I will put a pun in every word of this sentence because I've been practicing dad jokes for the past 2 decades. And it's like, it's insane. But the TSA Instagram, if you haven't checked it out, also people listening, you should if nothing else, just read some of the captions. It's pretty top tier Instagram pun content.
Okay, so we're plugging Susie and we're plugging the TSA. Similar content.
Yes, they are very, very related. I'm sure Susie posts a lot of like photos of guns and knives that get confiscated from people. That's like the weirdest part of the account is like, I see this photo and I'm like, why is this giant knife on my screen? And I'm like, oh, it's the TSA. Hey guys.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile in Wisconsin, I feel like that'd be a very accepted thing. They'll be like, oh, is that like a new hunting knife? That's so cool.
Yeah, that's weird to me to think that like people just like have like shit hooked into their belt. Like that's just so bizarre. The people just like have guns on their belt and like knives on their belt. I also just think I don't understand it as someone who's like not, I don't know. Let me just fucking piss off some people for a second while we're here. Cause I just don't give a shit. The idea of having a gun for protection, I feel like the people that are the most inclined to do it are the people least danger to anybody. Like, if you live somewhere in a suburb with your 2-car garage and your 2 kids and your dog and your wife, and you live with 40 other people also named like Robert, John, and like Paul, your risk of anything happening in your life at all, more than like just anything, is like 0, which is the same reason why the police in those towns like harass 16-year-olds for like smoking weed and like driving 5 miles over the speed limit when they just got their license, because there's no real things happening there. And then the only real crimes that happen are like these crazy shootings in schools and movie theaters and all this horrible stuff. But I don't think there's enough break-ins in the suburbs to warrant the amount of like concern people have for their home and their safety. That's my thought. And I'm sure that's going to offend and piss off a lot of people, but like I don't give a fuck, because I think you're afraid of stuff that's not real. And that's coming from someone who's like been jumped and lived in like 2 of the more rough neighborhoods in New York. Not like the craziest, but the further east I moved in Harlem, I was like, okay, I definitely feel less safe. And then I got jumped by knife point by 3 kids who later like murdered a woman in a park. And I was like, wow, I'm really glad I made it out of there that night. And then also living in Bed-Stuy where like someone wanted to get their gun in the deli to shoot the deli dude in the face. Like that warrants being concerned, God. But like your 2-story home with your kid who's an honor roll student with your family stickers on the back of your minivan, fucking chill out. You don't need it. It's not for protection, which is fine. Go hunt and do your thing. I don't care about that, but like, I don't think that front's worth it. That's my 2 cents. I hope everyone's mad and unsubbed and blasts me on the internet.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way. If you actually care about protecting your home, there are much smarter and safer ways to do so. I mean, like, the only thing you might use that gun for is maybe shooting someone who steals an Amazon package off your porch. Like, I'm trying to think of like, I don't think people really, I'm sure like gruesome break-ins like still happen, but again, not to the point where like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand it either.
And not in the towns where the people are like the most prepared for it, I think, is the biggest thing. Like there's places where I could understand people having a certain level of protection, but then there's certain places where I'm like, is this real life right now? Like I can't, yeah. I don't get it. And, maybe I'm just underinformed and whatever. I've had conversations with my brother about this a lot because he is a vet and owns firearms and stuff. And we've had like a lot of conversations that I think are very helpful, which we'll have on this podcast sometime, and then we can just offend everybody and it'll get real tense here real fast. But like, because neither of us gives a shit about anything. But I don't understand it. I think that there's like a certain line of like delusion with things, and it's the same point where people are like, people worried about certain policies for like tax things, right? And I tend to lean a little bit more left politically, but I think I'm pretty neutral as far as like if I agree with something, I agree with it. I don't care what side it belongs to, but like I think there's this tendency of people, and there's a whole bunch of memes that I thought were hilarious about it, but they're like, hey, if your Friday night out is here and it was a photo of Applebee's, you don't need to worry about the new tax policy being put into place, because people are like, they're going to take my money. No one gives a fuck, man. Like everyone that makes like less than like 100 to 200K a year, not even fucking almost important in any of those conversations. And like, it doesn't warrant the concern of being like, the man, like, bro, the man doesn't even know you exist. You're like an ant to them. Like I just don't understand it. I think there's certain things that just like, they don't make sense to me. This got really intense, by the way, with like political thoughts in the last like 10 minutes. If you don't want to speak to this, I should have given you a heads up.
No, I feel like that's a fairly like innocent not innocent, but like I feel like that's not super intense to be like, yeah, if you're making like less than 100K, like you shouldn't worry about like your taxes going up. Like that's a very tame thing to say. Um,
Yeah, but I know
what was
everyone's
it
gonna
like?
be all
It was
pissed
like
off about it.
400K. Like taxes would only raise for people who make 400K.
Yeah, and then
But
people are like, this
I
is a
think
bad
some
policy.
people cling on to principles more than they, um, rather than just thinking about, looking at either the actual like policies or, seeing how it would apply to their life.
Yeah, like the
Um,
same thing with gay marriage. And they're like, what, now I can marry my dogs? Like, no, you fucking idiot. Like, did anyone say that
yeah.
shit? Not even almost. Like, what, you're just going to take it to
Yeah,
the farthest
usually the
extreme?
usually the argument of like someone clinging hard to principles is like, well, like what's the limiting factor? Now, I understand that that's a very real thing to talk about. Once a government says that this is acceptable, I think a natural question is like, well, what's next?
Sure.
But you can also use that as kind of like a fake argument to just manifest things that policies come up because values change,
Yeah.
and uh, I don't think you need to worry about, people marrying their dogs anytime soon.
Yeah,
Like,
and just like on an argumentative standpoint, that's no longer an argument about the point you're trying to argue. Like if that makes sense. Like if
yeah.
you're arguing that, it's like what you said. It's then arguing what's like the where's that line where it's like, okay, this is now no longer
Mhm.
acceptable. That's not what the argument is. The argument is like, hey, is this acceptable or not? And that should be the argument, not like, well, is this thing that's on a totally different playing field like valid? It's like no one gives a fuck anyways. Like we're not even almost arguing about you and bestiality right now at all. That's just not what it is. And I get it, like it's there's also like a sliding scale on that like argument tactic of like, okay, well, if I take it to this extreme thing, like sometimes that can be valid and other times it's not. But I don't know. That's as political as I've ever gotten, I think, on anything that I've put on the internet. But the home break-in shit, relax. And the taxing shit, relax. No one cares. We're all just like scrambling for last place. Chill out. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I've been one. I mean, I donate money, when I can. Sometimes it's very small amounts. Sometimes it's small to medium amounts. And like, that's just a very healthy practice to have anyway. And, for me, like if I understand like where my taxes are going and I know that it's going to something that I believe in, I don't mind taxes being raised because to be honest, I feel like the money was never mine to begin with anyway. And I also
Sure.
I learned very quickly after getting my job that more money did not make me happy. It does not equate happiness. Yes, it like solves like a lot of problems. Like I would say like a lot of your survival problems can turn into like, more metaphysical problems.
Sure.
But that's exactly the problem. It's like, how do I be happy? And more money does not make you happy. Uh,
I think we're
that's
getting
just a lesson that I've learned.
a slight bit of robot stuff for a second here. But yeah, I think it's still audible. The whole more money doesn't make you happy thing. There's a really good video from a YouTuber I watched, Casey Neistat, which was a huge influence for the New York thing and like a big inspiration for a lot of stuff, which is just overtly obvious if you watch any of my vlogs from when I was, first moving to the city. But about that same thing, because he had like a similar life story in that he ran away from home and then like lived with family on a couch and then like impregnated his girlfriend at like 14 or 15 years old and then like just collected like police barricades to give to some artist for like cash per barricade or something. And then like he just like he came from like literal zero and now sold a company to CNN and has like bought this giant home in LA and had this really nice apartment in the city, like where he talked about the whole money and happiness thing where it's like money doesn't make you happy, but for a lot of people their happiness is stemming from, like you said, like those survival issues where it's like, oh, I don't have money to get the clothes I need to look presentable for this job interview, or like how am I going to afford to get to this job interview, which like I've gone through both of those things. And when that's the case, I'm not really worried about like, do I have purpose? I'm like, man, I fucking hope I don't get a ticket hopping this turnstile because that's another $100 I don't have. Like, it like frames things very differently. And everyone's like, oh, well, money won't solve problems. Like, I feel like that's the first thing that people say who have never had no money.
Mm-hmm. No, it's important. It is important to address that. Like, yeah, like unfortunately, money makes the world go around. We all need a little bit of it, and like, there's just a certain way that we've gotten used to living. And if you don't have money that lets you live that kind of life, it's going to be very hard for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't remember what we're talking about. But yeah, New York lost a real one with Casey Neistat leaving. I'm sure we're not the first nor the last to ever say that. Sometimes I used to walk past 368, the
Yeah.
like kind of creators like house
I walked
collective
past it
thing
the
that he
other
made.
day. Not as pretty, not on camera, it turns out.
Well, I mean, hey, when you're like shooting things in 4K with like drones and stuff, like I'm pretty sure you can make anything look awesome.
Yeah, it was like boarded up. I wonder if it's still like up and functioning and stuff. Because when I walked past it, it was like, I don't know, probably 2-3 months ago. And it was like pretty boarded up. And it was also kind of a weird area on Broadway. It was like past Soho enough to be like weird. And then there's a dude like
Mhm.
asking for change and like pacing on the corner in like a really concerning way on the corner of 368. And I was like, huh, okay, well, that's different than I expected just from seeing the videos. Like, oh, it's going to be some crazy pop up looking thing. And I was like, oh, it's like boarded up and I think it's closed. Like,
I think they're still operating, but they have shifted resources away from social media to just actually like running the business. At least that's like what I saw last time I checked. But um, I remember when they had like a pop-up tattoo artist come
oh,
for a
yeah.
couple times just to do like pop-up tattoos. And I'm not really a tattoo guy, but like I was like, man, if this guy comes back again,
Oh,
I
dude.
may have to go. And
Yeah.
so I tried to see if he would come back, but as far as I know, he did, which is a shame.
By the way, for context, I realize I'm like a fidgety person. Not that sounds creepy. I don't think there's a way to recover that sentence, but I'm like very like I putz with things just always. It's just what makes me like when I'm thinking or when I'm just sitting. It's just kind of part of it. So this is the lighter that Moore got me for Christmas. It's like a 1930s style Zippo lighter, which is super sick. So I just felt like I should explain what this sound was that happened. And also I have this little clicky cube that's also from Moore. I have two of these actually. These little fidget things. If you don't know what these are, they're not fidget spinners. So chill out. Don't be mean to me. They're like these little like twitchy toys. Like there's like a light switch on this one and like this wheel that spins around in a really fun way. And then this one has two sides. It's like a video game controller for a
Oh,
very small person, and it's pretty great. But I feel bad that I hope I don't listen to this in post. I'm like, wow, I was fucking up the audio with all these twitchy toys. But for anyone who's noticed, that's what it was.
to be honest, I feel like it's not even going to show up in like the edit, and then it's going to be like, well, now I have to cut this whole section of me explaining
Oh, I'm
fidget
gonna leave it
toys.
in. I don't give a shit. With ours, I literally didn't even listen back. I was like, I trust that it was fine. There's only been one time where I edited anything, like audio wise, like actual content wise, just because I wasn't sure how I felt about putting it up, and it was like nothing crazy. I was just like, I'm just gonna cut that part because it got weird, and then we tried to recover it, which was also weird, and then we just said let's just cut that out. So like, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna include that. But for this one, I just like the whole point of this podcast. If you've made it this far, first off, kudos to you. I say that like it's an accomplishment, but to be fair, I listen to like 3-hour podcasts sometimes, but only when I drive across the country. Regardless, thank you for being here. And the point of this is just like I don't like having plans for this because it's like pseudo therapy just to like say a bunch of shit that's on my chest so I can just like vent it and also hang out with friends and have drinks and like not have to think about it. Because all my music videos, like the ones that do the best or the ones that I try the most on, are like very thesisized. There's a objective that is very clearly stated and then met with a conclusive statement below it, and that's like a lot of work sometimes. So this is just free balling podcast. That would have been the second title. Would have been way different.
Yeah, I listened to it a little bit on like 1.5 times speed. I think we're good. I don't think anything crazy
Damn,
came up.
that
Felt pretty
that's
natural too. Felt pretty natural.
that speedy life. The first time someone said, "Hey, your video is still pretty cool, even at like 1.5 speed," I was like, "Damn, that's such a weird thing to do. I just don't get it." But I mean, I guess whatever
I
floats your boat.
I never really do that just because I like to hear like the way that things like were like intended to be heard.
But we
But
were just
something
my
like
podcast was just boring, is what you're saying. You're just like, nah, listen, this needs a little bump.
I was just like, well, I just want to make sure that like do I need to address anything in part two that came up in part one?
Oh, it
That's
was
like, oh, I
ours.
really do
Okay.
address that. No, I listened to half of it and was like, this is fine. I remember the conversation being perfectly fine too. And actually,
Yeah.
I was running today, and because I had put it on 1.5 times speed, I was listening to an actual podcast, And I was like, this sounds much faster than like I think these people are speaking. And I realized, oh, it got like applied from the last time when I was listening to
Not an actual
the,
podcast. I get it. No, it's fine. Yeah, it's
yeah,
fine. It's fine. No, I
not
get
an
it.
actual podcast.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Drinks with Dylan. It sounds like a just a menu. Looks like a well, now there are menus on Spotify. Like what
Yeah.
restaurant is this?
Drinks with Dylan. Here's the list. That'd be fun. Just a list of, hey, here's what we drank today. Maybe IRL when that can be the case. Well, is there stuff you want to talk about, by the way? I mean, it's usually free form anyways, but is there anything that you were like, I want to talk about this today?
Not really. And I thought I had like questions after listening to episode 1, but
Dude,
now
if
I'm
you
like
do,
blanking on everything.
Take a second. I'll stall while he thinks. My stalling is going to be talking about my hair and the YouTube channel. If you're not watching this on the YouTube channel, you should be. We have a YouTube channel. You should go subscribe. And I'm not just saying that because we only have 2 subscribers, but it's then you can see us. And I'm like slouching, so you can see how bad I slouch.
Wait, am I one of 2 subscribers then?
Yeah, yes. And then the other one's my other YouTube channel. Fuck yeah, that's dope.
Oh, by the way, Dino's Pizza. That's the place in Staten Island.
There it is. I will probably never go to Staten Island, but maybe one day just to take the ferry because it's free apparently.
It is, and it runs every half hour, and it's essentially like a nice little free boat ride around the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I enjoy it. You know what I've gone to quite a bit that I like? There's a garden called the Chinese Scholars Garden.
Okay.
And it is a huge garden there that is like just completely like in like a random area that like you just have to walk this like weird empty road to get to. But then it's this huge park that is like all these cool structures in this garden, and there's like a labyrinth. There's like an actual like hedge maze where if you like find your way to the center, it's like a little secret garden with like a little castle. And that's just like one of 10 amazing things that they have there. They also have like a performance space, and like it is awesome. Every time I go there, oh, and they have like all these like cool like section that's like a path like built into a hill and stuff like that. It is so cool. Now I know like people rag on like Staten Island and like especially if you like listen to any like Pete Davidson, like he's always like making fun of it. And definitely like where people actually live, like in the downtown like kind of center area, yeah, it can get a little sketchy, but I've always had a great time. I used to take voice lessons from someone in Staten Island, so that's why I would go.
Okay, interesting. Slouching, sorry, I forgot. So you can go subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's Drinks with Dylan. We do a video version. You can see me slouch. I used to, when I was streaming all the time back before I had a job / was getting the unemployment bump, I would take this Sharpie, I'd make an X on my hand, like right here, where you get the little hand thumb meaty webbing tattoo thing, to like remind myself to sit up straight, because I would just like progressively as the day would go on, I'd just like turn into like talking under my mic, and it'd be such a bad time. But you can see me slouch, and you can see Noah's curtains that almost match his hoodie but not quite if you go to the YouTube channel. And also, the point of mentioning this, look at this like insane, I'm trying to grow out my hair, right? I said I would do it.
You muted
like
yourself.
To it, but it's got this weird length in the back that like almost shoots out to the sides, and I look like I'm from like this weird 70s era.
I really hope this is still recording at his end.
And it's
Dylan, you lost
terrifying.
audio.
Oh, I lost audio with you. That's my fault, because I muted my mic, so I lost audio with you. I'm sorry. My Alt key is what transitions my scenes in OBS, but it's also what mutes my mic. And then when I have streamer mode disabled, so I'll mute and unmute, you can't hear it. But when I enable it, now the podcast listeners can hear the that thing. So yeah, it choked it. But my hair is scuffed is what I'm saying. I'm trying to grow it out, but I'm having a bad time. So go look at my ugly hair on the YouTube. Did that stall? Did you think of things? Or are you just like, fuck it, I condemn my euphoria, I don't even care anymore?
Yeah, actually, I mean, there's something that I don't think we've talked about a whole lot that has become like quite a crusade for me. It's about my role as like someone in the technology industry and how that's like changed over the years. So I could just soapbox it if you want.
Dude, soapbox it up. Do you mind if I disappear for like the first 30 seconds of it to run to the restroom? Will that be offensive? Is that rude? I know it's like bad hosting, but I like really want to run to the restroom, but I don't want to have to cut out 30 seconds. because I'm also a lazy
No,
editor as well as a terrible host.
that's completely fine. I'll give a background on myself so you're not like missing any information.
My guy. I'll be right back.
Awesome. Okay, so just a quick reminder for like the computer side of my life, everyone. I went to college doing a double major in computer science and music. I tried to consider music as like the main major, and computer science was being the kind of the hobby major, which I felt worked out quite well because when I think about like the best memories I had in college, it was definitely at the music school. The computer science side was just, to satisfy any curiosity, that I had. And I, and actually, here's something that's really interesting. I learned actually how to code in Python in a music class. I'd mentioned before that my composition teacher was also like a math and programming, just programming type of person. And so I pretty much learned Python in a class that was meant for music analysis at scale with computers. It's pretty cool. All right, Dylan's back.
Hello,
What's
world.
up?
Sorry, it took me a second. By the way, before I forget, tomorrow's at 5:30. I don't know if I texted you, but their reservations for the gym are weird. So 5:30 tomorrow.
Okay, do I need to reserve myself, or were you able to bulk reserve?
No, I bulked for us. Just bring your student ID so you get a discount.
Lit. Yeah, and I'm a student again.
All right, part two.
I
Hope
got
I don't mess this up.
I got it. Okay. I will start with two questions. And the first one is, did you ever watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix?
No. I think.
Cool.
Wait, no, more didn't either. Never mind. It was a different movie or something else.
Okay, here's my next question. How what has been your experience running ads on Facebook and Instagram?
By the way, there's like a little bit of stuff with the video. The audio is fine, so I'm still gonna let it rock. But if you're seeing that on the internet because you just subbed to the YouTube channel and then switched podcast platforms because you're an anarchist that didn't want to just finish it on one platform, I saw that. It's okay. No one was hurt in the making of that because we still heard him. That they are not super great, and that also, in speaking to the marketing team at the company, it's apparently more of just a scheme to get people to pay money instead of actually like doing anything on the sense of marketing stuff.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about like the role that ads play in in software, in social media platforms, and even like traditional ads that you would find in like a newspaper or something. And actually, here's a really interesting thing that I found. This is just like a little sidebar, but here's a plug. I should plug things. One of my, I would say, good friends and mentors and teachers. He is like one of the big like music people at the Florida State School of Dance. He's also been my piano teacher for quite some time now. He was also my first cooking teacher, which is pretty dope. He's taking a class that was, I would say, very popular in the School of Dance called Artists Seeking Transcendence, which sounds kind of uh, like a cult, I'll be honest, or like a fake religion, and I totally acknowledge that. But that was the actual name of the course, and it answered questions like the role of what is the role of happiness actually mean in your art and for you as an artist? What does it mean to tackle justice in your art? What does it mean to be courageous as an artist? Like these are things that we think we know, but his course actually explored those questions in depth and then would pair those lessons with like do something courageous, like actually courageous, like tell me what it feels like and work that into a piece of art, work that experience into a piece of art. And it was very successful, and he's turning it into an actual like seminar on Zoom now. And so I am helping out as like a technology advisor for that. But the whole reason I'm bringing this up, by the way, artistsseekingtranscendence.com. And the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because he's been doing Facebook like and Instagram ad campaigns.
Okay.
And for him, they've been going quite well.
Okay.
Well, I mean, well is like, relative to like what your goals are with an actual like social media campaign. But
Yeah.
I
What
realized
are
something
his?
that's like kind of like not cool in my opinion. Um, you can make an ad and try to reach someone that way. Or you could like make an actual Facebook page and post. And there's this asymmetry that really bothers me where like the whole reason that like Facebook is around and can make like 95% of the functionality of their website free is because when you pay them as someone who, wants to put an ad out into the world, you are paying for like guaranteed eyeballs to see that ad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that is a premium for them. Like that is like literally their business model. Um, or if you didn't have the funding like or the budget for an ad campaign, you could do it the old-fashioned way by just posting on your Facebook page. But here's the thing that's like not fair is that for the vast majority of people, the news feed ranking is determined by Facebook. And it works very mysteriously where like you would make a post and you would see only like I don't know, like 25% of your audience or the people that like your page actually see it and the rest will never ever see it ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this like weird seedy way of basically being like, sure, we'll give you ways to reach your audience as like a business or an artist on Facebook, but like if you actually want to guarantee that people will see your stuff, like pay us for ads, which is weird because I think a lot of us assume that like if we post something on Facebook that all the people who like the page are going to see it. That's
Yeah.
kind of the assumption that we rely on.
It does
So
not
that was just a
happen.
weird asymmetry that I found that um, as a newly reformed like tech practitioner makes me a little bit like salty.
Yeah, the first thing you see when you do, as someone who's done sponsored posts on both platforms or slash the same company or whatever, the first thing you see is more likes come in from your own followers. Like people that I know follow my page and that I'm actually friends with will like it because they see it and it gets prioritized in their timeline. But I am already in their timeline and maybe they haven't liked anything of mine recently or haven't seen anything of mine recently because of that or what it like. And I don't follow it enough because they apparently change very fast anyways. So you have to like daily wake up and be like, okay, let me read the algorithm so I know when I'm posting today, which is a whole nother like fuckery thing. But like, I don't know. It's super weird. And when I was speaking to the marketing team, they were like, yeah, it's actually just kind of a cheap trick to get people, small businesses, to give them money and take advantage of them trying to grow. But then I've seen people who've done it and they like garnered a lot of follows or things from it, but it's like, well, am I going to save up like and spend like a grand or two on an ad on these platforms? Like, no, I don't think that that's the thing. But then you see people that like can do it, which is something that bothered me because me and Moore talked about it once, and it was someone who's doing something pretty similar to what I'm trying to do with the music education and music stuff, but it was some other like medium or whatever. But they didn't have to worry about money stuff because they had a family coming from money and whatever else. And like their biggest investors for their startup that they were launching was like a company that was like run by one of their parents. And then the other thing is like they can just run a post for a bunch of money and that can garner that much traffic because there is a conversion and you can track how many people view it, how many people actually follow the link, and you can see the watch time on your video. Like if you're set up in that business mode, you can get all the analytics and the breakdowns of it. But like you can literally buy eyes on things and that will increase your watch time. And then like everything, right, like drops and drops and drops. Like here's my post sponsored. Okay, cool. Then here's the people that are like actually going to watch it. Here's the people that are going to click what I want them to click. Here's the people that are going to like buy it or watch the full thing or subscribe or what, like that. It just keeps tapering off. But if you just have a big enough sum of money in the beginning, you can just like buy enough eyes that click through like becomes higher because your curve just starts higher. Like I don't know. I was like slightly bummed about it because I was like, well, that's just unfortunate that that's just a thing. But I guess that's how it always has been. Hence, like investors and capital. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think if you come from marketing or advertising, like me being like, oh, I just realized this the other day, you're like, yeah, dummy, like that's how it works. But here's where the story gets eerie, and this is where it crosses into the work that I do as like a tech, you know, practitioner. So, right, you're already in the system where like um ads show up on a news feed and posts show up on a news feed. If you're only posting, which is your free option as a business, um, there's no guarantee that the people that like your page will actually see your post. So you're kind of pigeonholed into like paying for impressions. And this is like when it gets super weird. How can Facebook guarantee impressions? Well, it's by getting people to use the website. And how do you get people to use the website? And this is like what we're now seeing. Now, to be clear, like I'm a huge follower of the Center for Humane Technology. They're the ones that produced The Social Dilemma. If you just recently watched it, like congratulations. Like I'm so happy that like everyday people now have like the words to finally talk about like why technology makes them feel like a certain way being like addicted or depressed or anxious or angry. Like now we kind of have like the reasons why technology makes us feel that way. And so Facebook is in the business of guaranteeing impressions, and the ways that it's able to get people to look at those ads is to get people addicted to Facebook, to Instagram. And the techniques that they use that are a little bit seedy. Things like prioritizing clickbait, which is probably one of the more like less intense tactics. That goes up to kind of siphoning people or funneling people into extremist content, right? If you can get someone who...
Oh, dude, that's a whole thing. Wait, is that the thing you're talking about? The social experiment? Is that where they talk about the dude who's like our age who like went conservative and then went super far conservative and then ran out of conservatives interviewing conservatives and then like watched like left people like viewing extremely right people and then he like cycled back around to the middle?
No.
Okay,
but
sorry, never mind.
Are you... No, but like that's
So
part of
to
this
interrupt.
system. You might be referring to... I know there was someone who got interviewed by the New York Times and other news places.
That's what it was.
Was addicted to YouTube. Addicted to YouTube rabbit holes.
Yeah, it was that podcast series thing.
Yeah,
on the Times.
this is all in the same vein because again, like how does YouTube make money? It seems free. All we have to do is put up with ads. But remember, like, how is all that tech able to be funded? Because they're guaranteeing people that pay for ads impressions. And if you can get like and it's just basic math. The more the more time that you spend on the website, the more ads you'll see, the more likely it is that you're actually going to buy something from that ad. And when you're writing algorithms that are optimizing for things like watch time, aka the amount of time you spend on a website, you might realize that extremist content hooks people. It's very emotional, and it keeps people on the website. And even if that makes them feel anxious and angry and distrustworthy and puts them in more of a state vulnerable to conspiracies, the algorithm doesn't care because it's a zero-sum game in maximizing watch time. And that may not seem so bad if it's one person, but this is an experiment that's like going around at scale. And if you're like the biggest video sharing platform on the internet, that's a huge, that's a real toll on society.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you already listened to that, so I'm not gonna like rehash some of the tactics that like YouTube uses, but this is applicable to my work because I'm working with some friends on a project that is essentially an app that recommends nightlife, places in New York,
Okay.
And with my friends, we want to hang out. Where do we go? Well, let's just have an app like recommend things. And that sounds so innocent, but there are so many like evil design patterns that we just think that's just the way software is written these days.
Yeah.
We don't stop to think about like, is this actually hurting people?
Yeah.
Like here's an example, like infinite scrolling. Like if I was designing a recommendation software, wouldn't I just want to get like a bunch of recommendations and like give them to someone and they can just swipe through it endlessly? Like tell me the last time you like spent like 30 minutes on Instagram just like endlessly like swiping and you felt good about it afterwards.
Absolutely never.
That like never happens.
Absolutely
that never
never
happens. Yeah. No, because it actually takes you away from things that you might actually like want to do in life. And the sad part about all of this is like in the eyes of these algorithms, right? Like you are worth more to these tech companies when you're at your worst, when you're at your most anxious, you're most angry, you're most addicted, you're unhealthiest.
Yeah.
Then you are pursuing things that you love, right? Like if you wanted to actually connect the world and actually help people become the best that they would be, you would make it so that they spend less time on your websites. But when
Yeah.
your business model is directly tied to watch time and advertising impressions, um, for now, this is like the state that we're in. And when I first wanted to be involved in like, programming, I was like, I want to learn how to make an iPhone app, and I want to learn how to do a social media app, and I want to know how to like run little A/B tests of like, changing the font here or the color there and seeing which one sticks more. And I want to be able how to like, I want to see how behavioral data from users can influence the design of software.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of those practices were not invented in a vacuum. They were invented to have these tech companies achieve crazy amounts of growth in a very short amount of time at the detriment of, again, like
Humans.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, human.
Yeah.
Like
I
literally the
laugh, but
world.
it's
Literally the
terrifying.
world.
Yeah, that's insane. Like it's very. Also, there's some weird things happening. So if you're again watching, I clicked off and clicked back on to try to get the video caught up. It's fine. Don't subscribe to the YouTube. Just listen to this on every other streaming platform. It's fine. Um, yeah, dude, that stuff's like insane, and it's like very creepy because it does get into that like. It's almost scientific at this point. The unhealthy impacts of a lot of these things and like the lack of control and all that stuff is just like super super weird. Like people, I feel like just in the past like year or two, people are like, wait, I just searched this thing or whatever on my computer, and then on my phone later on Instagram is like, yeah, you're signing in the same this, that, or the other. Like it's very like it doesn't feel very, I don't know, it's all very like accessible, as much as we try not to be. And like, I mean, I've had the same conversation with friends where they're like, yeah, I have some friend that's trying to be like anti-government and like doesn't have a Facebook or like uses a different name. I was like, you idiot, you're on your smartphone doing that. Like, you think you're untouchable right now? Like, you're not, you're not even almost that, because it is such like a, I don't know, that's so crazy to think about, and it gets so unnerving so fast because it's like building, like you said, it's their whole business model, and it's built on like the control, and not in a healthy way, but in a very manipulative way, and just like dark emotions, but playing off of like human emotion and human behavior in a way that's not beneficial, and it's like, I guess the one thing is like, it's not, I guess, like traceable to be negative innately, I think, which is like how they skate by with all of this. But like, no one's oblivious to the fact of like you said, no one's ever just endless scrolled and spent like an hour on the internet just fucking around on their phone and was like, oh fuck yeah, that was great, I'm gonna go drink a smoothie now and sit in the sun. Like everyone's like, fuck, I'm sad, I'm gonna go watch the same show on Netflix for the 8th time and order takeout and just feel sad, like because that's like the impact. But it's so trackable and manipulated now. Like I sent a photo of my like whiskey set to someone that my brother got me, and I logged into their website to create their warranty thing, just to like sign the warranty. And then like 3 days later, I'm scrolling through Instagram and I was like, oh, there's my whiskey set as an ad on Instagram. I'm not even almost surprised, because I mean, they could have targeted me anyways based on the pages I follow, but I was like, literally was just on this website. And then they send it. And then it's an option. When you click like the report ad, you can say like, seen too much, or like, I've already bought this. But it's like, why? I already bought this. I did the warranty. You know where you found this information from. What the fuck? It's just so creepy.
It is creepy, but like the ads themselves actually aren't like the worst part. Like advertising is a natural part of capitalism, unfortunately. What is worse is the tactics that these companies use to get you in a position to see the ads. That's the thing and it's your attention, right? You have everything vying for your attention. Like, your shower time is like precious time, and like, thank goodness your phone isn't waterproof, because of all the things that are vying for your attention. Lord knows, like, your shower time would be going away if your phone was waterproof.
Yeah. And then how am I going to do my
it's
job
no longer,
or my other job?
Yeah, and it's no longer good enough just to be like, well, just have more discipline and like set timers on your phone, and like, just don't take it in your bedroom. Like, these designers in, Silicon Valley and wherever else, like, they're exploiting basic human psychology that they know that we don't know. Like, that's just not a fair fight. And, they are real addictions. Maybe YouTube's not your poison, but maybe Instagram is, right? Like
Sure.
We all have felt this. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat or, what your race is or what your gender is. We all have felt this. And again, you just pick your poison, because that's how a lot of these services work. And it's really disillusioned me, because like, I'm part of the problem. I'm in the tech industry. I make software. I'm part of the problem. And
Yeah.
I work, hard to like speak up when I can. Nothing that I do at like my work day job is anything really like that. We don't need to advertise, because like
I mean, you're already just
we
the
have a brand.
biggest. Yeah, they already
Yeah.
did really good early on. It's done.
Yeah. Yeah, but like these things like working on artists seeking transcendence, or this other like recommendation app with friends, like this is a real opportunity to kind of like turn the tide just a little bit at a time. um Doing it a little bit at a time isn't good enough. It's the same thing like, okay, let's say you had a kid, right? And like all kids these days are like on Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok.
Hmm.
um and you see the real negative things impacting like your kid. It's not good enough just to be like, okay, my kid is going to delete these apps. Well, now they're just alienated from their friends and their community, and like the conversations that your kids' friends are going to have, they're going to continue happening on a platform that you no longer have access to. Like, you
Hmm.
really need everyone to kind of leave at the same. In that specific scenario, what you do is you get the entire class and all their parents and say, okay, all of our kids are going to quit social media at the same time. We're going to do it together.
Yeah.
Same thing with the tech industry, right? Like us as programmers, like I'm, trying to do my part, and I know that there are other great people out there trying to do their part, but it's not really going to even carve a dent in the money that these social media companies make unless we all kind of like walk out together.
Yeah. I mean, I felt
So
the
I know
same
you
way
said we
about
weren't going to get political, but now I'm getting political about some things that,
No, it's
I
fine.
really care about.
I mean, let's go one further. Like, I've had the same thought about. Well, there was one thing you mentioned. Fuck, now I can't remember. Oh yeah, okay. Ads. Remind me about ads and then bipartisanism. But okay, so the ads thing. The first thing was that, like, targeted ads isn't anything new, in the sense that like, but before it was like broader strokes, right? So like, there's chances that those strokes would miss, and the way it was received in that data was like informed was less creepy, So like, case in point, if you go back to like television and radio when that was the thing, like daytime television and daytime radio was not listened to by a whole bunch of men because they were doing Job stuff, and the women were doing like home care things and like being parents and being with their kids, or their kids were gone and they were just like, I don't know, whatever 50s housewives did at home, like alcoholism and like trying to get out of the relationship. Like, I don't that got dark. I'm sorry. That was a joke. It's okay. But like, that was the market. So they're not going to be like, if they're going to do some like male product thing, it's going to be like a male product that a wife would get for the husband, kind of like. It was targeted based on like, okay, dudes aren't around this time, or like Super Bowl, like, okay, it's just a bunch of guys watching other guys hit other guys. That's just like, we're not going to be like, do you want to get a new Swiffer? Like, no one gives a shit about that, because that's not who's watching. Like back in the day, Swiffer wasn't a good use because that brand pulled us out of the era I was trying to recreate. But you get what I'm saying. It was like bigger strokes just based on like tendencies versus like literally the same website I was on 3 days earlier to register a product. Like that amount of accuracy being like kind of transition is like super uncomfortable. But I get what you're saying with that, because it's not like, that's not the malicious part, but I think that's the part that like kind of opens people's eyes to like, oh fuck, I'm like really tracked. When I say yes to cookies, that means like yes to cookies, and that's just what happens. The thing that you were saying about everyone leaving social media, I felt the same way for a long time about political parties, because of the amount of money involved and the amount of like broad strokes that has to be done and pandering that has to be done. By having like a system, like, we can call it bipartisan or not, and I think it was literally George Washington, but I could be wrong on this. Don't quote me and be like a history buff, because you feel like an idiot when anytime you say George Washington said, because like, first off, what a cliche. Could I pick anyone more prominent? Like, clearly I don't know history, and I'm like the main guy. But it was someone. If you look at like presidential breakdowns, everyone was independent at the beginning, and it was one of the earlier presidents, and I think it was Georgie that said it. But that was like the start of a bipartisan system is like the end of it being an actual democratic process, because now it's like you have to pander to like, what do people who identify as like Democrats and liberals think, and what do people who identify as Republicans and conservatives think, and how do I pander to that, because all the money for advertising and for like marketing myself is there. Because if you register as like Ralph Nader for the Green Party, it doesn't matter that you do it 300 times in a row, you just become a meme, and that's as serious as it ever gets. Like that's just the funnel that you get in. But unless everyone is like, hey, you know what, fuck it, this year we're not going to vote, and then what happens? And even then, like, obviously I think the cycle would just continue, and they'd be like, well, we picked for you, get fucked. But like, you know, unless there's that like mass exodus, these things are so far in motion, which is like terrifying to think about, and just like stresses me out and keeps me up at night, because it's like, how do you undo that? How do you get out of that? How do you get out of, and I think about it with everything, and it becomes like a lot. But just let me list off my anxieties very fast. When you think about like the cost of things versus the amount of money being made, or when you look at everyone in like this dilemma of, you know, like middle class ideology being like, you know, you just go to college and get a degree, and then you get like a car and kids and a dog, and that's, you know, and then everything's fine. And that's just not real life. And like, how do you stop those cycles that are so far along? Or like the whole, hey, college is worth it. How do you start that cycle of being like, hey, but maybe not, or maybe it doesn't need to be this much? Or like, you know, a thing that I think about a lot is like, just again, it started as like a meme, but that like whole 10-year glow up thing, where it's like minimum wage 10 years ago and minimum wage today, and it's the same, and then it's like the average cost has like doubled at least, like of living, or like of rent or something like that. It's insane. And that stuff is like, unless there's some giant thing, and now it just sounds like we're an uprising podcast, which is not what I'm saying, but you know, these things are so far along that to think that one of us can make a difference is almost delusional and laughable. But it doesn't mean like don't try. And I struggle with it a lot, because then it's like, well, fuck it, why do I even care? You know, because if I uninstall Instagram and Facebook, like I'm the only person that's going to suffer, because less funny memes and cute dogs. I've worked really hard to fix my timeline, and like less views on my things. But like, you know, with barring that like grandiose thing, you're just so far along this rabbit hole that now it's just kind of like, well, we ride it out and see what happens, you know. Like, I don't know, it feels so like, I don't know, it's easy to feel helpless in these things, because it is such a big scale issue, and one person doing something is just like a drop in the pond of like, yeah, I didn't do it. It's like, well, okay, man, but now what? Like, is that dark? Yeah. Now this got kind of eerie and pessimistic. I'm not trying to like have that vibe, but you know, I think it's very real stuff that's like, we're pretty far down a lot of rabbit holes already, whether we like it or not.
And I think it's important to just also realize, like, you're certainly not the only person who feels this way. This is something that like we've all felt. No, and here's the really crazy part. No matter like what side you actually identify with more, we all feel that. We all feel like the other side is just going to destroy the world. Seriously, this is something that, like, it's literally the great equalizer, the way that we're feeling this way. I think about this a lot too, and I'm gonna get like hopeful and then like sad and then maybe hopeful again.
Dude, I'm so excited for the roller coaster. Let's do it. I'm ready. Yeah, I just did the roller coaster on. I'm subscribed to the YouTube channel. I'm ready.
So here's like the positive. Here's like the hopeful thing, and I think about this a lot too. Go back and listen to the first podcast, but I support sexual assault survivors, and sometimes I get really
podcast,
like,
not mine. Go to the first Noah podcast.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes I get really like down, and I'm like, how are we going to stop sexual assault? Like, this seems like it's way too big, and it's way too prominent, and it's way too underreported. How can anything ever get better? And what I've realized is like, we can't even begin to solve a problem if we can't agree what the problem is.
Sure.
And I think that is so underrated. Like, being able to actually agree on what is the actual problem here. Like, in the context of sexual assault, people don't even agree on what assault is. Is this assault? Well, is this bad? Can I do this? You know, like,
yeah,
all that stuff that should be basic to solving the issue is so misunderstood. And I think much more effort needs to go in on just like understand, like really coming together and just understanding we both feel the same way. Why is that? Why do we come from different walks of life, but we're feeling the same way about something? But we can't even define, you know, like what the issue is. So that's like hope number one. Here's the bad part. Um, we are in a time, right, where we're living just as much, if not more, of our lives right now in the digital world rather than the real world. And the thing about the digital world is because of all these manipulative tactics, right? Like, fake news, extremism, and stuff. Remember, these are byproducts of just a bad, evil business model.
Mm-hmm.
We are presented a unique reality for each one of us that has been carefully crafted. It knows all of our desires, all of our vulnerabilities, all of our uh, what's the word for when you like insecurities, all of our insecurities, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
knows it for each specific person. But so that's the content, but with content comes context. And the context is that, well, this is just the way that everyone else must be seeing the world, right? Like we don't realize that like when we go on Google and we type a Google search, pretty much everyone's going to get a different actual like autocomplete suggestion. We, even though we know deep down that's not the case, it's still presented in a context that makes us look like what I'm seeing right now, what I'm exposed to in my digital world is exactly what everyone else sees.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that that's not true at all.
Yeah.
But something weird happens when you believe that like this is just what everyone else around me is seeing. There's actually no need to come together and compromise. There is no need to actually talk about what the issue is because we think we understand what the issue is and that everyone else around us does. And the ones that we interact with don't understand. Well, they're the ones that are wrong. And I'm the one that's right. And so there's no need, when things are presented that this is the way the world is, there's no need to come together and actually like communicate and talk about something. That's the downside when the whole point, the whole root of the problem is agreeing on what the problem is. But we can't get everyone together when we're in a current scenario where we think that like our unique perspective of our digital world, which again is just as much as our reality, if not more, when we think that that's just the way that everyone else is seeing it. I really believe that at the root of so many of these issues, even you were talking about like, right, I feel like there's a political party that does not represent my ideals. Like
Yeah. You just have
the
to
root
pick
of the
like.
problem is,
Sorry, go ahead. I think
yeah,
there's a delay. You just have to pick whatever like the past two elections felt like everyone was trying to pick like the less bad of two people they didn't care for. They're like, I don't want Hillary. I don't want Trump. I don't want Biden. I don't want Trump. And then you're like, well, fuck this person. I guess I support you by default because like you have to. Yeah.
yeah, and that's been made worse because of like all the polarization that happens. And
Mm-hmm.
I see two options. Either we like reform tech companies. And I think people will start realizing that, okay, there is a way for a two-party system to work for me, the individual.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's not going to happen and tech companies keep going the way that they're going, what does that mean? Does that mean that like we have like every single person has a unique political party specific to them? Because that's what our reality feels like. So like, how do you solve that? Basically, what I'm saying is I'm not saying that that's the answer. I'm saying if we continue down the road where we're going with technology and attention mining, we have to reform the two-party system because it's not like we're magically going to like fix the two-party system in this environment. If our environment isn't going to change,
Yeah.
then the party system has to change with it.
I mean, it's the most
And I don't
polarizing
know if
thing,
that's
anyways. Yeah.
yeah. So both are options because polarization like this really hasn't reached this level before.
Yeah.
The big turning point is social media, it's technology, and it's the cost of a semiconductor, or like a silicon transistor. That's what I meant. So
Yeah.
either we just say this is the way the world is now and we change, or we take a step back and realize maybe we're doing some real damage. Like maybe me paying like 4 cents for that ad impression, and realizing that there are millions of other people paying 4 cents for an ad impression is actually doing a lot of damage to people at scale. And
Yeah.
we take a step back and we try to figure out how can we reimagine all of this. And I would imagine that there would be some political reform there too. The problem is our government moves very slow.
Yeah. I mean,
And
most big
when you
things move
have the
that
rate of
slow.
technology literally increasing exponentially, it's not a contest of who's going to win.
Yeah.
Like the technology will win. The government doesn't move
It's
nearly
not
as
even
fast as
almost
computing
close.
technology does.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is like to have them like just to, I guess, add to the tech thing, like it moves fast, but the other thing is like for them to restructure something on such a grand scale, because that's like a principle, right? So like in me saying like, well, they both move slow, like anything that size moves slow, because this isn't like the government moves slow at small shit, right? Tech stuff moves very fast at small shit. But like when you have to reset a principle, like a pillar of anything ever, just, it's an analogy, but if you literally think of building, like that shit takes for, like the foundation, you don't just like change that in a day and you're like, guys, we fucking did it. That shit takes forever to adjust. And like the other part with it is like the amount of money that are involved in tech and in politics is fucking disgusting. So the drive to do it is like, are you actually interested in human good, or are you interested in money? And like we all know where tech companies and politicians stand on that, and no one gives a fuck about the former. Which one did I say first? It's more the money drive, like there's like, well, fuck it, that's your guys' fault. Just like you said, it's like, oh, just be more disciplined, like, which is insane. It just doesn't make, dude, it's like, it's crazy and it's kind of horrifying. And to what you spent, like what you mentioned earlier when you were speaking to the hotline that you were on, the first thing was like, that's something that like you're exposed to too, in like your little bubble. And I think we spoke about this. No, it was with Sam, the bassist for the trio. We spoke about it, but I like disconnected from the music community, which I'm not saying is all the same, right? But the comparison will make sense. Just give me a second. Like I disconnected fully. I don't follow musicians that post like really shitty hookah lounge posters of their gigs, because there's like a lot of top tier artists that post like, there's a very distinct vibe to hookah lounge posters. And if you know what I'm saying, you can see the poster and you're smiling right now. And if you don't, you'll go to a hookah bar and be like, this kind of thing, where it's like DJ set, and it's like these names and this cursive crappy font with like shadow and, and like all these musicians that were posting shit that I didn't care about, or that I was like, this isn't benefiting me or inspiring me, but I'm like comparing myself to it or whatever. And I just like unfollowed all that shit, like all of it top down, and just like redid my interior bubble, which I think, and this isn't me trying to pat myself on the back, but like I've spent a lot of time staring at that, being like, I don't know if this is good or not. And more also telling me every time, being like, it's not healthy how much you're comparing yourself to this, that, or the other, for me to finally do it. And it took like weeks of me just like unfollowing a bunch of stuff, and then only following stuff that I find inspiring, like art or photos of landscapes. And like, I'm really into like old timey, like wealth things. I don't know, like Gatsby shit, like I think is really cool. So like to find those and follow that and like change my whole entire like cyber/real, because of where we are, like ecosystem, took a whole bunch of work. But you being on these calls, like you see this issue at a scale, because you said like on weekends, right? So you see this on a scale that most other people will never experience in their life, right? Because some people can say like, I know one or two or like a handful of people, whatever, that have even spoke up about it, which doesn't mean it doesn't happen or anything like that. But when you're like, I guess for lack of better words, like on the front lines like you are, where every weekend you're on this line to be called and to help people through it, like you see it on such a scale that others don't have that perspective, which brings in that whole element that you spoke to of like, well, people just don't know, or people think they know, or whatever, which is like not great. Like I also probably have no clue how frequent it is, even though like I read things and I have a lot of like very left-leaning people that share a lot of stuff on Facebook and on socials and whatever, still probably have like no clue in comparison to you for like how much any of that stuff actually happens. There's one other point that I had, and I cannot remember for the life of me what it was, but it was something based on that, but I lost it. So, the argument thing, the identifying what the issue is, right? We spoke about it earlier when we were talking about the whole gay marriage thing. The issue isn't where that fucking line is. The issue is the gay marriage principle, but that's not the argument that people want to have. Like if you can't identify that issue, and I've spoken to so many people, and I'm not going to target a specific side, but my experience has definitely been with more one side than the other, just because of the conversations that I've had. But like when you become so far entrenched in a belief and like a sense of correctness, I guess, for lack of other, like anything else that I could explain it as, you become like inarguable with, just on like a logical like basis. Like I spent some time in school and working with some professors on like the art of arguments and just like logic and how much it is like, okay, this is what is like, it's an untruth or something. I don't remember those words, but stuff that's like logical fallacies and like what's a definitional argument versus like, the red herring thing and all this stuff, where you can't, even knowing all of that, like you can't funnel certain people in to have a legitimate argument with you when they're past a certain point, or when the principles are so far gone. Like we talked about it with the whole news stuff and talking about like vaccines and stuff, where now science can just be not true because you're just like, I don't believe it. And that is like a valid thing because of the people that have been at play, and because of, again, what's being perpetuated on socials and stuff, where you're just like, yeah, but I don't believe it. Like it may take you 45 minutes of arguing with someone being like, but science, and they argue 40 different things. And then by the end of the argument, you get to, they just don't believe it. And that just makes it true to them. Like to even get to the point of here's the viewpoints, and to have like an argument that's actually on a topic, because so many people argue about things without having, like, if people aren't aware of it, the topic or the point being argued can shift so many times and like so many places. It's like insane. And I think part of when I realized that too is in like teaching, like when you teach someone something, or if they're like not doing whatever, it's usually in like a bad way, not in a good way, but maybe in a good way, depending. If you're like, hey, this is what you need, they say like a counterpoint, or like, oh, well, this is why, or whatever. You see so many times, especially with younger students, like it's not even related. Or like I coach someone now for climbing who's like in their 50s, and I'll say stuff and they'll be like, oh, but this, that, and the other. And I was like, I don't care. That's not even almost the point that we're arguing right now. But people just don't know how to like keep an argument or keep a point, or what's logically like attached and detached from the point you're trying to make. So it's so hard to like have these conversations with people. And I know it happens on both sides too. I'm not just saying like I fall with conservatives and they're dumb, because they've had the same conversations, and myself having conversations with people who are like really far on the left, and I'm like, but this, and they're like, but here's a different point that doesn't relate, but this is what I'm standing on. And it's like, we're not even the same time zone to have this conversation, which just makes all of this way harder.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why even just like having an argument, like why we lose track of like what the issue is. And you're right. It's the same thing with like Colin Kaepernick, right? Like kneeling for the national anthem for a statement on police brutality. Somehow that spun into like an attack on veterans.
Yeah.
Like that's
right.
what then the issue became about, which I agree. Like it just kind of spun out, and something happened. And again, I do believe technology is at the root of all of this. We decided that like our viewpoints and our opinions were part of us. And so that when someone attacks an opinion, it attacks a part of us. Opinions weren't always this way. We used to wear them like jackets. And sometimes we'd take the jacket off if we found a better jacket. If we changed our opinion based on, a new advent in our life, we took off the old jacket and we put the new one on.
Yeah.
And if someone attacks you, they're attacking your jacket. They're not attacking you.
Yeah. And now
I
it's like they attack you if you change
that's
it.
changed.
Yeah. Sorry, not to hop in, but like now I think a thing too is like to go with that, like if you change jackets now, people are like, well, you changed jackets. Like that's a sign of like growth and maturity, not a fucking bad thing. Like, oh, well, you just switch sides. Like, yeah, if I'm wrong, I fucking eat that shit with the spoon. And then I'm like, oh, well, this is what I think is right now. Like, why would you not do, like, it makes no sense to me. And I think part of reconnecting with my brother is that like, he is definitely more like right-winged and I'm more left-winged, which I think is just going to be the route that podcast takes. But that we're both people that are like very rooted in logic. And I think it's because of our upbringing, which is like eerily similar, but on opposite sides of the spectrum. But like, he's one of the very few people on either sides that I can speak to. Because if I speak to you, like, I feel like we're just going to agree on everything because we have like pretty similar experiences and thoughts on shit. And that's fine, but that's stuff where like, if I only hang out with a circle of Noahs and Dylans, I'm like never going to grow or learn anything. But when I have a conversation with him and we speak about something like gun control on that he has strong thoughts on and I have strong thoughts on, or a conversation about like, I can't even think of other stuff, but like we talked about like school shootings and things, like we can have that conversation where we can agree and disagree on stuff and we can pinpoint what those arguments are, and like it stays on track. It's not just like, yeah, but the sky's blue, so fuck your point. It's like it avoids all that like fluff and that like distraction from it, which is really great. But it's so hard to find people that are like that. I guess this also sounds mean, but don't take offense, people listening. But it's so hard to find people that like are capable of that, because I think the majority of people are not. And I think maybe it's just a lack of awareness. Maybe like after listening to this, someone has an argument with a friend and is like, oh, I'm not actually arguing this point anymore.
I want to be very clear too that like um the blame is not entirely on the person, right? Like,
Hmm.
again, we
Yeah.
can't just tell someone have the discipline to get good at arguing. It's important to remember that like we are part of a point in society right now that is hurting that part of us. Like, we're incentivized not to argue logically. We are like our interaction online favors hot takes
Yeah.
and extreme opinions and attacking and cancel culture. So naturally, like that's going to inhibit your ability to argue. I believe that most people genuinely are in things for the right reasons, and I don't want to say that like some people are just better at argumentation than others. Like, and I'm using argumentation like in the formal way.
Sure.
Um, it's not on that person. We're all part of a system right now that is not doing us any favors
Yeah.
for any of this.
Yeah, I mean, you get more
Um,
likes being like aggressive, like you said. Like if I post something that's like, "I think this is stupid," it gets more likes that way, and then everyone else is like, "I think that's stupid too," and then there's one person who's like, "Maybe not," and everyone's like, "You suck," and then it's gone. You know, like it's very,
yeah, yeah, and it's very. Oh man, what was I just thinking about? Oh yeah, I think the antidote is like not like yes, you should surround yourself with people with differing opinions. It's the best way to kind of break out of the filter bubble that we call it, because again, like we are clustered online with people who are very like similar to us, at least like our digital signature of us.
yeah,
But the that's not good enough to interact with someone online who is different than you, because remember, the system of most places online are flawed. Really the antidote is doing it in real life. It's just
hmm,
interacting with someone in real life. That's the antidote. Um,
yes,
you're just going to make yourself very anxious if you start following a bunch of people on social media that you don't agree with. That's just going to hurt you. Um, the antidote is really to interact with people outside of the digital world, because right now the vast majority of it is flawed. You know what it's like? It's like if you were planning a city, if you were a city planner, um, you like you need to figure out what your values are. And if you didn't value things like family life and retaining some semblance of the environment, and you cared more about, okay, how can I get people's attention? How can I get them inside the door? How can I get them to like step out of their house and step into my store?
just
You'd
the
have a
city of
place like
Times
Las
Square.
Vegas.
Yeah,
You'd have Times Square.
yeah,
You'd have
exactly.
Times Square. You'd have Las Vegas, where
Yeah,
it's very emotional things and very like bare level appeals to like
yeah,
those types of things. Um,
yeah,
again, like Las Vegas is fun. I've never been, but like I don't want to like hate on it. But like that's what online is right now,
yeah,
and we
definitely.
can learn something from zoning, because we've had to do this in real life. And you brought up something before about the government having like values, or I can't remember the exact word you used, but a synonym of it was like, values.
Hmm.
We have done things like this before. Okay, so like, same place with, in the real world, there are places where we realize you can't have you can't have any billboards, you can't have any advertisements in this part of town. This part of town is going to be a park, and it will always remain a park. And you can't have any advertising because, valuing that is just something that we value.
Yeah,
This has also happened in, more traditional media. I think you used to be able to like advertise cigarettes to kids on Saturday morning cartoons,
hmm,
and then there's a very noticeable spike in like teenage smoking, because like all these ads were like in between your cartoons being like, "Hey, this is super cool,"
yeah,
and the government, and I mean really the people lobbying the government decided that we value our kids more than the profit of the tobacco companies. And so we're going to say that between these hours, like you cannot do this anymore. They zoned essentially the television media. Now we can
yeah,
do the same things with online. We can just say like, um, you know, let's say between like 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. you can't comment on a news article on a website, like on a news website. Like, it's at first it seems extreme, right? Because we think, well, that's
sure.
just the way the internet is, that everyone has an opinion all the time and can post it all the time. That's just the internet. Well, no, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that way. I can tell you as a literal programmer that change would take probably half an hour to implement.
Yeah.
Like, so the space doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And I can't remember like why we got into this. Oh, I think we got into this because again, like, you know, we're spending so much of our lives now in this digital world, and we need to zone it better. We need to realize that we value people's self-esteem more than we value the profits of Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, and Instagram did this. They took away the like count after seeing the insane amount of increase in teen girl suicides.
Yeah.
Like, if you want an objective way to measure mental health, there's no better metric than suicide. Yeah. It's never a question, really, if someone took their own life, did they have a mental issue? Yes, like, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And they took away the like count because of how it quantified popularity. Yeah. And we valued that even though it was probably going to bring down engagement on Instagram a little bit, that it, you know, the safety of like young people was a value that we held more important. And if we do more things like that, I really think people will restore their ability to have civil discourse, to kind of meet, you know, together.
Yeah, definitely. I think to anyone that's made it this far too, because I got to go like really fast because Sushi and I got to meet more and pick her up. This ended up being like a 2-hour podcast, which I was not anticipating, which is great though. I think the first hour was a lot of just fun, casual shit, and then it got really heavy. But to anyone, just to like on one of the last points you made, if this is something going forward that happens, I really encourage anybody who's first off had the patience for this. It's probably a fucking moot point because if you made it this far, you're probably someone that having an argument with is worthwhile and that you're open to. But if you're not, and you're some like asshole person that's going to be super like rude and condescending and terrible to talk to with a different opinion, maybe next time someone has like a different opinion than you, don't be mean, you know? And that goes for both sides. If someone's like, you know, if it's like something very sensitive, you know, like, fuck, I can't think of the word, but you know, like having a kid, that's a hypersensitive issue. If someone brings it up, even if they bring it up like an ass, maybe just try to be like nice, you know, and give it a chance to be like, hey, I hear you and I disagree. And we can all just talk about it without being like, fuck you on the internet, on Facebook comments, because no one likes those people. It's just a bad time. I think it starts with really small shit like anything else. Because it like the point being, these are all big things that need to happen, but it doesn't start on a big scale, and it's not going to just all of a sudden be a light switch that's just like, and now we all do this. I wish, but it's not. Anyways, I'm so sorry, man. I definitely got to like super bounce and, you know.
No, I'm so sorry.
No. It's literally
worries.
not your fault at all regarding the personal values and experiences. You know, I got to go take care of the family.
You wanted me to bring it, so I brought it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, Noah, we're going to do more podcasts and try to get back to weekly. This puts us at 3.5 hours. We got another 2.5 hours left of space on the internet, which means we can do 2 more like hour, 15-minute podcasts. But I got to run, put on a jacket, and go pick up Sushi because that's something I need to be a good person. So farewell, everybody. I'm going to end the podcast right now.